Greys have the superior cranial capacity for interstellar travel. But the xenomorph is the only species cool and actually looks in a tactical combat scenario. You are just saying that because it is an elongated morph has a phallic, Josh. It's an aerodynamic.
Josh, what are you and Daniel doing? You know aliens are fake, right?
Get out of here, Nancy!
Much later.
Aliens do not exist. This is a diabolical attempt to basically counteract divine revelation. And
Yep.
That was so dumb. First off, AI had Josh calling Daniel Josh. It was so bad.
I love how, like, I get why we made fun of Josh on that, but why did Daniel catch some strays there?
The idea is they were going to so totally be alien nerds, and Nancy is the genesis of them changing their.
Finally, the real story is told.
So true, so true. Nancy, how have you been?
Oh, I've been pretty good, actually. How have you guys been?
You get the honor of being one of two girls who we allow on our program. You and Catherine Bennett are the only two ladies that we allow on Avoiding Babylon. So
I love how Angela Erickson has just been memory hold.
Oh, but I mean, now poor.
You mean after
Angela?
Yeah. Well, trivia days were, different. But yeah, it's been so long since we had you on. I thought it would be a good idea just to kind of give people a bit of a recap of your story, because it was such a powerful conversion story. It's probably one of the best I've ever heard. And
Keith Nestor said that today too.
Yeah, it's one of the best I've heard. And then we're going to go a few different places tonight, but I also want to get into maybe relationship dynamics, because I know you work with your brother, and I know you guys probably have. Well, I think I remember you telling me it was like pretty tense relationship before your conversion, and just to see how that kind of worked out.
God, okay, I thought you were making a joke.
No, well,
I heard on your last stream you wanted me to spill the beans on some family.
Well, that too. We definitely want
for sure.
Like for sure, definitely. But I
That's
also
what locals is for.
I definitely know Josh is a difficult guy. Like, he's not an easy personality to deal with. So I would imagine that's probably challenging. So we'll get into all that. But from what I'm hearing, though, you only converted once you tried knickknacks. That is what I'm hearing. And we're going to credit Nancy's conversion to knickknacks.com. This is the ultimate knickknack conversion story. So
if you want a family member to convert, not only do you hide a green scapular somewhere, you hide a pack of knickknacks too.
So if you want to, this is better than pray the gay away, guys. You give knickknacks.
You can dip the gay away. It worked for me. I actually have some in my mouth right now.
The gay away with knickknacks.com, guys. Knickknacks is a product that contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive substance.
You're gonna kill me. I'm like the smoking because I use knickknacks.
I can't believe
but it's not a smoking cessation aid.
It's not a smoking cessation aid, but it definitely will make you straight. So go to knickknacks.com.
It worked for Jim.
Use code AB25% for 25% off your first purchase. Use code AB10 for 10% off all subsequent purchases. But in all reality, you can pray the gay away with your Black Monk Grocery. So go to blackmonkgrocery.com and use code Avoiding Babylon at checkout and start hammering away on those beads, and let's pray the gay away. And everybody, guys, I know I'm making light of this subject, but it's going to be a very, very deep conversation.
There's no way I'm going to be able to monetize this episode just from the ads we just did.
The ultimate conversion therapy, our sponsors, Knickknacks and Black Monk Groceries, guys. All right, so Nancy, why don't you take us back a little bit, because I don't know how much you're willing to share about your childhood, but part of the thing we want to get into tonight is how you're not born gay, but like but that we don't know this the genesis of it, but a lot of it has to do with childhood trauma and coping mechanisms and things like that. So whatever you're willing to share about your youth and where this whole story begins would be awesome.
Yeah, so just a brief background. I was raised in a Protestant home initially. I do have some sexual abuse in my past, so you obviously can't separate that as a fact that would probably impact the outcome of what happened to me as time went on. But also I would say, obviously none of our families are perfect. So I try to be careful in this area because I have a wonderful family and we've actually mostly all come to the church by this point, and it's just been incredible. But, I think naturally, the dynamics in the home can sometimes affect certain things as well. And as I was growing up, I remember having same-sex attraction as young as third grade. It could have been earlier, but I mark third grade specifically because I had a crush on my third grade teacher. And, I don't think that the crush was, at the time, it wasn't like sexual because I was in third grade. I wasn't really thinking that way. It was just more of like a safety thing. I felt safer. I think maybe in some ways, I also think I learned, this is kind of an interesting feat. When you learn about, I learned about, same-sex attraction, not with that verbiage, which I think is actually super important to pinpoint, because when you don't learn about it in the correct terminology, as we now understand it in the church, you do start to see it. You can understand how easily it could become an identity category later, which would be just a false anthropology. So essentially, I learned about it in the context of homosexuality, gay, these terms, and they were always associated with sin. And it's I think that made it hard for me to, I kind of equated if I came out and said anything, then my family would leave me. Now, that wasn't completely true, but that was a huge driving force. And I think in many ways, had we known the true teaching of what this was, if I had a kid now who had displayed disordered affection or desires or temptations early on in life, which many children these days do because of the culture we live in, I would want my child to feel comfortable talking to me about it so that I could explain what is actually happening to them, because it's actually far less shameful than I think we end up feeling when we're isolated in those things. So I think it was the isolation of feeling like I couldn't bring these things up out of fear of total abandonment. And
were you guys a church attending family when you were younger though, or were you just kind of nominally Protestant?
No, I think when I remember being really young and being a very church-oriented family. So, and I actually remember having a lot of fun too. We had a lot of church friends, barbecues on, 4th of July, all the whole thing. So, it wasn't, but I would say as I got older, it became more nominal as I remember it. Josh was the only one who really stuck to being a pretty, pretty good Christian, I guess you could say. So as I got older, as in probably high school, I don't recall going to church regularly in high school at all.
Yeah.
But I would say through middle school, yeah, we went every Sunday. We had church family, friends, stuff like that.
Did your Bible boot camp?
Yeah, we went to Bible. I actually really enjoyed camp.
Yeah.
So.
So all right. Yeah. So now, as you get into high school, your parents don't force you to go anymore, and you start to drift away from it. And how are your teen years? Are you just do you start acting out as a teenager, and that's what kind of maybe begins a gap between you and your relationship with God?
I think my relationship, more rigidly, I would actually say that I never really had a relationship with God. I would say I had no idea what that meant. I would say that my best understanding at the strongest point when I was considered somebody who'd go to church all the time rather than my family, which is when I was very young, I still only heard I only heard about God and understood him as a story. I didn't understand I didn't have any understanding of what relationship was. He wasn't a personal connection to me ever. I mean, we prayed, but I wouldn't feel anything. I just kind of was going through motions, you know what I mean? And so I thought for the longest time that was just what it was to be a Christian, which you could imagine later on, if you don't understand relationship, then it could be really easy to just dismiss God altogether and be like, I don't understand why this is even necessary. And then you kind of just abandon it.
So like growing up, even with the church you were exposed to, you never had like any kind of a relationship with Jesus, right?
No, but I want to say there's probably a real specific reason as to why. I want to say, and I can't speak for my brother, but my brother probably would say that he did. And I would say his story seems to point to that as evidence. So I want to say that this probably isn't a failing of like anything that happened in our family per se, of why it impacted him one way and impacted me another. I want to say that I internally struggled, like when I was going through, and I'm just going to be honest, when I was going through the sexual abuse years,
How old were you when that was going on?
I always say 5-6 years old. But quite frankly, I don't know. I don't really have a good memory. That's what's partly hard about telling my story, is I have a very, very poor memory. But we'll say 6. That's kind of the usual age I have tracked it back to. But when that was happening, that was not something I can share. And not only was it not something I could share, so as a young kid, I learned that I had to be secretive. And it's also really confusing because the person that I was, kind of having these experiences with, I had a love and a loyalty for. I mean, that was the other thing. I had confused, love very early on with like secrecy, with, doing what I needed to do to receive love a certain way. It messes a kid up. It's far beyond just the sexual attraction. That's very different. But just even your understanding of like love, of connection. And then when things were found out, I remember, you can imagine a young girl wanting to protect the person who's doing some of these things. And by the way, I want to just make it very clear that I've completely forgiven this person. I love this person. I pray for this person all the time. And not only that, but they were also a victim themselves at a very young age. And this is just the cycle, and so I'm not excusing it.
Was this person an adult or another young kid or
an older child?
Okay.
I would say old enough to know, old enough to be over me, as if they felt like an adult, because I was so young.
Was it a male or a female?
Male.
Okay.
And I actually don't know their direct age, to be honest. Yeah. So that's another reason why I can't answer. But I remember.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get like an idea, because I would imagine what something like that does is distort your view of what a man is, right? Like a man becomes scary at that point, right? And that probably affects your view of men in general.
Yeah, and it wasn't even just, here's the weird thing. And this is the difference, I think, between being forced down and sexually assaulted against your will and being love bombed into something, groomed. Yes, that's because that's where you get like Stockholm syndrome and things like that. Now I was never diagnosed with that, but when things were found out, I remember that was like the first day I actually can say I actually dissociated, because I left my body completely. I felt like, because I could hear this other person, basically being dealt with. We'll just leave it at that. And my parents were asking me like, what happened? I wouldn't say a word. I was silent. They took me to therapy for quite a while, they said, and I have no memory of them taking me to therapy. In fact, that was later on a resentment that I had. I thought like, how come you guys never tried to get me help? You know what happened to me? And they're like, we did. And I have no memory of that. It's amazing what trauma does to you. So I had a loyalty in many ways to this person, and you can understand that, like, how that messed me up a little bit. Then you think, is this my fault? Now this thing has happened to you as a young child that it's just already very disordered. And then on top of that, you don't know you feel like you're responsible not only for what happened, but for this person being caught, and you live with that in silence it didn't really come back to bite me in the butt real hard until about 18, when my family got divorced. And that's when it just like blew up. And
okay, so I had family members that dealt with stuff like this, and they were young kids. It was basically two young kids that got into something in my family. It was two young kids that went into something like that, and like an adult walked in on it, and I don't think adults knew how to handle it, right? So there was a lot of yelling and kids were in trouble. And then I think that brings shame into it, and it has an effect on that kid. And one of the kids ended up dealing with same-sex attraction himself out of those two kids that I knew, and like it really is, these things that happen to us when we're kids have such a deep effect on us as we grow into adulthood, and we don't even, and like you said, you disassociated to the point where you don't even remember going to therapy and trying to deal with this stuff. So the amount of things you block out of your memory when trauma happens as a young kid, and you don't even know that these are the things that are affecting your whole life. So your parents get divorced when you're around 18, you said?
I want to give or take. Yeah, I remember I had basically just gotten into college out of high school in that time. The divorce was very long and drawn out. So the official divorce, I was probably, I don't know how old I was, like 18, 19, maybe, I don't know. But I remember there being like 3 grueling years of just.
What's the age difference between you and Josh? How many years apart are you guys?
3.
So he's 3 years older?
Yeah.
And okay, so he's already probably off to college while that's going on also, right?
Yeah, he's in Kansas, I believe.
What's it like dealing with a divorce at that age, right? Because you're not little kids, right? You're older. Like, what's it like dealing with your family splitting up when you're that old?
Well, I'll tell you what it felt like for me. If you start with the premise that here I am as this kid, as long as I can remember, I have this hidden world that I've never spoken about. And I'm doing that so that in my head, I'm not saying this is the truth of the situation, but in my head, my belief was that if they know who I am, they will leave me. Yeah. And you can understand how the devil can get inside that fear, and that fear just grows and grows and grows. And it's just like, if it got to the point where it turned into like a personality disorder, which is this, basically like when I would have abandonment wounds where if somebody left, I would actually feel like I was disappearing. Like it's horrendously painful. And so my point is that, so with that being the premise, when my parents got divorced, we always grew up hearing things like, at least you have a mother and father that love each other. I never thought my parents would get divorced ever growing up my whole life. And then all of a sudden, things just started to unravel. And so what I saw, I took it as one of the biggest betrayals of my life, to be honest. Not that I didn't support it. That's actually funny. It kind of seems counterintuitive. I actually at the time was very upset with some of the things. I'm not going to get into that because, I love my family and it's not really about the details. But the point is that I actually wasn't even against it. There was a lot of things going on, a lot of anger. I think all of us were angry and for whatever reasons. But I still saw it as a rupture of how I had perceived what I thought I had versus meeting the reality of what actually was. And that was the betrayal that I felt. And it hurt me deeply. But I don't know that I would have been able to articulate that at the time.
Yeah. Quite frankly. And so now you're off at college, and I think I remember last time we spoke, you told us that you wound up getting into drugs and stuff too while you were in college, right?
Pretty quickly, yeah. Because once the idea of what I thought I had in my family had broke, remember, this is all built on the premise that I had done in my heart what I perceived as a huge sacrifice, which was and this is all a false way of thinking, but just to kind of dive into that framework and that mindset, in my mind, I had spent my entire life hiding from this self that was inside so that my family wouldn't leave and that I would be somebody that they were proud of. And I saw that as I did this for you, that's how much I love you. It was a sacrifice, you know? And so when I realized that my family was breaking apart, all of a sudden I went into this like, well, if you guys don't care, then I don't care. And that's when I finally was like able to experience, you know, I kind of went off the rails. I kind of, so all of a sudden these things that normally would have like kept me away from those things. Like if my family was still together and we were still the family I had known growing up, I would have not gotten into drugs, quite frankly. I mean, you can't for sure say that, but realistically, I was really driven based off this, like, I had really saved, I had really pushed down something that was inside of me for a long time to make my family proud. But when that breaking up happened, I felt abandoned in many ways by that breakup. And so I thought, well, if you're going to leave me anyway, nobody really left me, but that's how it feels. If you're going to leave me anyway, then I'm just going to, you know, this is my way of leaving you, even though I wouldn't have probably articulated it that way. And so I got into drugs. I mean, it was started really innocently, you know, partying. I finally came out to my mom for the first time, even though that was still very difficult. She actually had to say the words because I couldn't even bear saying them to her. But I was so suicidal.
Did they suspect? Sorry? Did they suspect it? Like was your mom already kind of? Because a lot of times parents will kind of pick up on it before you even do verbalize it.
Yeah, I would say they did. I remember actually hearing a conversation. This is part of the fear. I remember hearing a conversation between my mom and my dad, and when I was in high school still, and let's just say I heard one of them say that I think that this might be an issue. And that scared me. And I was like, oh no, they know. And we never talked about it. And so I just went straight into, I was actually pretty like, although my family would probably disagree with this, in my mind, I was hyper feminine in high school. If you look at any of my like high school pictures, you know, I went to the prom. I was actually the homecoming queen, you know, which is actually really funny. Yeah, I had the football, captain of the football team on my arm and everything. It was kind of funny. So I used my femininity now, which is actually the truth about me, I'm using as a shield to protect what is actually going on inside me so that nobody knows. So yeah, I do think they both suspected, for sure, because my mom was the one who had to name it. If she hadn't suspected it, she wouldn't have been able to name it. But right. I basically called her one night on the verge of like just wanting to die completely. He said, I have something to tell you. And, you know, I don't remember verbatim the conversation, and I said, I can't say it. I said, I can't, I'm crying, you know, and she's, I said, you have to, she's like, I think I know what this is about. And I said, you have to say it then. She's like, no, I want you to say it. And I was like, no. You're like, you have to say it. And she finally did. And I said, yes. And then she assured me that she loved me and that she didn't agree with the lifestyle, but that she did love me. And, you know, that's really hard to hear from a parent, because when you're in that place, once again, the part of what you see in the world nowadays and what the issue is and the friction between people is that gay is seen as an identity. You think it's who you are. So when you say, you know, when you hear your mother say, I don't agree with that lifestyle, in their head, they're saying, you don't agree with me. Not just like something I do, something as like who I am. My being. And that is like, so it feels very conflicting to hear, I don't agree with this, but I love you. It's like, you just said in the first sentence that you don't love me. You can't, you know what I mean? So that's the sort of friction there, I would say.
Yeah. As we go through this story, because I want to get into that a little bit, because I have a thing that I'm dealing with with a person in our life. It's a similar thing where like what is the appropriate way to approach something like that? Because you don't want the person to ever feel like you don't want the person to hear what you heard from your mom, right? Like, so it is a tricky conversation. So, and all right. So what year is this, by the way? Like, what year, like, I'm trying to gauge what year it is, because like the insanity of the culture
starts to be about what, 2010,
right?
Yeah, I would have. Well, if I came, let's say I came out around, I think I was, I don't know, we'll say I was 19, 20. It would have been, 2009, 2010. give or
Okay,
take.
yeah. So it's before like the culture hits full pitch insanity. Like it's still,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the
A couple of years before Oberfell, for instance.
yeah, like gay
yeah.
marriage isn't universal yet or anything. So,
Yeah.
okay, so all right, now what are those years like for you after you come out?
Well, after I came out, I kind of just was like, I felt a weird sense of freedom. I mean, my whole life I had and the freedom that I felt, came from the idea that I just wasn't hiding this thing that I had taken so much effort to hide for so long. And so, to be honest with you, the really dangerous part about this experience is that what is actually a cage, as we know it, is actually something that does really feel like freedom for a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I started.
There's something important about that, right? Living a lie, right? Like living a lie, no matter what the lie is, has psychological damage that occurs, right? So if you're presenting one way, but inside you feel completely different, like to come out and finally just say, look, because keeping things hidden from the world is a dangerous thing. It's this very reason why sins in the dark. It's why confession feels so good, because you finally come out and you admit something and you're forgiven, right? So there's it's common sense that if you're hiding this from the people you love the most and you're not sharing this, when you finally do get to open up and say, look, this is what's going on, there is a freedom in that, even though it's not true freedom.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And unfortunately, it gets perceived as real freedom because most of us don't have the framework for what true freedom really is. I mean, and so, I went on and lived my life. I started, now I had nothing to hide, but it's really interesting because I still had been going on this party road. And what I'd like to say is that it's funny when you reflect on it, because my experience internally was still a mess. I mean, freedom, you can say in one regard that I didn't have to hide this stuff anymore, but in the other regard, it's very clear and evident that I was messed up on the inside. And the reason drugs.
Can I give you a small example of that?
Yeah.
I had quit smoking in January, and I went a few months without smoking. And then like a month ago, I started sneaking cigarettes and I was hiding it and I wasn't telling anybody. And then when I finally we were away one weekend and I just was like, I'm having a cigarette in front of my wife. And she was like, you're smoking? I'm like, yeah, I started smoking again. And I smoked like a pack of cigarettes that day in front of her because I was like, I finally don't have to hide it anymore. Now, the thing is, I felt free because I don't have to hide this thing anymore, but I'm killing myself with cigarettes, right? Like I'm now smoking, killing myself with this. It's a very.
And then he got a shipment of knickknacks and was fine after that.
I'm throwing them out again, but it's just a very small example of what you're talking about. It's like just because I'm not hiding that thing anymore. I feel like, all right, I'm free. But then like you're just overindulging.
And that was smoking for a couple of months. Imagine living a completely
weeks,
different.
Not even months, like literally a couple of weeks. And it wasn't even like I was back to full blown smoke. That's what I mean. I would have a cigarette here and there, and then once I said to her that I had a few cigarettes, it was like I bought a pack and I just went all out because I was like, I don't really care.
Yeah. Right.
That's because he's not smoking still. I'm throwing them out again. I caved in like 2 weeks ago and then I just kind of had it out. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the story.
No, it's okay. But yeah, no, that's actually a really great example. And that's basically how it felt. So inside I was feeling, I wouldn't have connected that to my disordered choices, obviously.
I don't think anyone would have, Nancy.
Yeah, right.
He compared sneaking cigarettes for 3 weeks to living a completely different life.
All right, I'm the worst.
No. No, I love that example. I like simplifying the example. It's true. So yeah, I went down the path, and I think the thing with drugs, and I think you've shared in the past, even on our past, that like, didn't you say you had a brother, Anthony, who struggled?
Yeah, I
with drugs
I
and
have a brother
stuff.
who struggled with heroin and cocaine. And look, even look, Nancy, like I did have a relationship with Jesus as a kid. I was raised in a very Catholic home. And then I had a period
Mm,
where I lived as though there was no God. I was never an atheist or anything, but I just lived as though there was no God. I went through a very similar party phase as you did. I went every
right.
weekend, I was getting trash and I started smoking pot and then I started taking opiates. And then, like, I mean, I had a pretty bad, like my life spiraled pretty quickly out of control too, just because when you don't have God present in your life, it's amazing how quickly things spiral out of control. And I left the sacraments for this period of time, so it got really, really bad in my life for several years. So that's why I like
Yeah.
don't feel like you're being judged when you share this stuff. Like you don't know how many people when you talk about this are went through something similar and they can relate to it. So don't feel bad. We're all messed up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I mean, when I attribute it to, the internal suffering that I was experiencing wasn't actually fully able to be felt or processed or any of that stuff. It just compounded because drugs made me feel better.
Mhm.
And so I learned really quickly that if I did put a drug in me, I didn't have to feel any of that. Now, I don't think addiction articulates itself like that to you. So you kind of just spiral. And before you know it, you're like, I mean, so it started off as in college, I was just partying with my friends, you know what I mean? And then it turned into about 2 years into that, turned into now I'm buying drugs and I'm going home. I'm not going to class. I'm going home and I don't want to share with my friends anymore. I'm not trying to go to parties because my addiction has taken full force. So all my money is going towards this thing, and I can't afford sharing with other people, or else I won't have enough for myself.
We're like when you're hanging out and doing drugs with people, that's one thing. Once you start doing drugs alone, that's when you have a real problem on your hands that you got to deal with, right? So if you're just alone and doing those drugs, that's when the problem is real.
Yeah, and actually, at the time I had moved into, I didn't really have any money, so and I had spent I never know if this is a good thing to share online because, I took out student loans, but a lot of those loans were used for drugs, and I, so I didn't really have a lot of money. I didn't have a place to stay. I ended up living in this party house is what we called it. It was right off Main Street. And it was this old brothel. It wasn't an active brothel, but you can imagine it probably wasn't blessed. So you can imagine the types of entities hanging out there. And they didn't have any extra rooms. So I paid them, I think $100 a month to live in their pantry. So I was literally Harry Potter for over like a year.
Yeah. Reminds me of the time you had Father Isaac on with the Harry Potter books right above him.
So that Harry Potter lived under the people's pantry, like under their stairs. Yeah. So I mean, that's pretty bad though, right? You're living in like a party house essentially, just living in their pantry. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so there was and I actually never owned a key to that place. That's how party central it was. Like people were just coming in all day. Half the people I didn't even know. They would just show up for, there's always somebody in the room in the living room, a bug circle table of smokers or doing some drugs, whatever it may be. And, it was the typical, you have all your weird psychedelics. Psychedelics were a big thing back then. Psychedelic posters on the wall and just just a bunch of weirdos. But
what is your relationship with your family at this time? Are you even talking to them? Have you cut them off? Are you hiding everything from them? What's your relationship with your brother at that time?
So my brother's gone. So we don't really have, to be honest, that big of a relationship. I wouldn't say it because of anything other than the fact that he was just at a different point in his life. He was just, he was off to college. And, my sister, I try not to talk about her actually on online too much, but she had her own friends. I think we were all dealing with the divorce in different ways. So she was really kind of doing her own thing. And then my dad, I wasn't speaking to my dad at all at that time. And then my mom, my mom always I was always very absent. But I think my mom and I always kept a good rapport. Like she was the one I most consistently was always in touch with, but mostly because she would just reach out to me constantly and see how I was doing. Like if I, didn't have something. I remember a couple times, I don't remember a lot to be honest, but I do remember a couple times that she seemed like she would sometimes try to bring things to me just to like peep the situation. I remember one time I was doing such high levels of just a lot of different drugs, and I wasn't eating very much, and my legs would get like just straight purple. And I would walk out into the car because I didn't want her coming in the house necessarily all the time. And
she knew you were living in this party house like this?
She didn't really know the extent. I mean, to her, it was just because she knew some of my roommates. And so she saw them as just like college roommates. The thing is I kept a lot of this from all of them. Like I was an adult, they weren't like in my business like that anymore. So, it wasn't, no, she didn't really know anything. She had no idea that it was a party house. That's for sure.
So you're all right. So do you have girlfriends at this time? Are you like, what's going on with that?
It took me a little while for that to happen. Just because I was such a mess. Like I wasn't somebody who was like fun to be with regardless. Doesn't matter if you're gay or straight. I was just kind of a mess. So, eventually I would say I had relationships. Yeah. Okay. Here and there. Nothing serious.
And is there like a turning point in this period in your life where like you start to go to like therapy or anything and try to work through this stuff? Like what's the catalyst that changes from this point?
Like what's rock bottom?
Yeah, like do you hit a rock bottom where you want to change things or?
Yeah, so I basically the rock bottom was my first ever overdose. I have been going to therapy. I've been going to therapy through high school. I was seeing some therapists out there who's pretty well known. So therapy was a consistent already at that point in my life. It was on and off, but I am not new to therapy. What happened was I ended up having an overdose one night, and I actually called my mom. And apparently I passed out on the phone when I was with her. From my understanding, people have to tell me their versions. So the people that were with me and other people, they tell me what happened because I have virtually no memory. I have one memory, and that's when I was in the ER very briefly, and I went to go pull out the drugs that I had in my pocket. And I remember the nurse saying, if you pull that out, we'll have to arrest you. And then my friend, he said, don't worry, we took all the drugs off you. And I said, thanks. And then I remember nothing. But I ended up waking up the next day in the intensive care unit with like monitors and, breathing tubes. And I had like no idea what I was so out of it. And I was like, where am I? Yeah. So the day before I had been struggling with anxiety a lot. So the day before I had gotten a prescription, I went online, figured out how to get a prescribed doctor. Because I couldn't get enough street value. It was just very expensive. So I would always double up on getting a doctor's prescription as well as what I was buying on the street. So I got Ativan prescribed to me, and I had taken 2 or 3 of them, and that's like the same as Xanax, essentially, pretty close. And I had taken 2 or 3 of them just alongside with the we were doing Coke, Molly. I mean, that was a pretty hardcore party night. So I was on Coke, Molly. We did shrooms later on that night. I mean, it was just kind of like a binger for like 3 days of like a lot of different things. Obviously, weed came with everything. And the problem was when I took 3, I thought I could handle 3 anxiety. But apparently with everything else, I had blacked out already. And so I kept taking them. And I don't remember, but because I will look back, and I told my friends, I was like, I've only taken 3. But one of my friends was a CPA, and he had done a pill count on me when I passed out, and he saw that there was nothing left, but it was prescribed the day before. So I had taken like 30 Ativan and had no memory. And the problem was that I had taken that over the course of like 8 hours, probably give or take, but I was mixing it with alcohol. And so I was drinking. I had 2 40s that night. And I remember, because I do remember very little, because when I had gotten earlier that night, I had written a post on Instagram that I don't remember writing, but it had worried one of my friends enough to call a welfare check on me. And so we had the cops show up to our house, and this is how you could tell. By the way, in Idaho, weed is like serious. Like I actually had to appear in court for having possession of marijuana once. Thankfully, I had it. And this is prior to California being legalized. Like there was a time where weed was really actually like, people don't remember those times because now it's like everywhere. But I mean, the time, if it was no joke in California, it was absolutely no joke in Idaho. Like they will get you. And so I had come out in the front porch when the cops were called, and I had started smoking like some pot in front of them. And thankfully they were really there for the checks. They asked me to put it away, and my friend grabbed it and was like, "What are you doing, crazy?" And they said not to have any more alcohol, and then if I were to be given more alcohol, then they would have to come back. And so eventually they didn't have to come back because my friends had to drive me to the emergency room once I was found passed out downstairs.
Wow.
It was intense. So that's what led to the change.
Yeah, so you wake up in the ER the next day in the ICU, not even the ER. You wake up in the ICU. Is your whole family called at that point? And
yeah, everybody knows. My brother is still in college. Nobody's in town. Everybody's out of town except for my dad. But mind you, I'm not really talking to my dad at the time, and so he's, quite frankly, at the time he was like the last person I wanted to talk to. So I remember I actually yelled him out of the room. And I said, I don't, even at that point, he was the only one who showed up because he was the only one available to. And I just wanted nothing to do with it. I yelled him out of the room, and he listened. He did. And he eventually came back, and I was a lot more, I chilled out a little bit. But afterwards, because the night before, apparently I had told them that I was trying to kill myself. Which is funny because I have no memory of that, but it actually makes sense because I always wanted to kill myself. I was always that miserable, and I think that's what the drugs did for me, is they kept me on earth a little longer, oddly, because I was scared to kill myself. But that's how much pain I was in. I always wanted to die. I just did not want to live anymore. And so they sent me once I was stabilized in the ER, they sent me automatically to a 5150. That was also the first time I ever spent in the psychiatric ward. And after 10 days there, I just stayed there for 10 days. And that was the point where my family was like, you need to go to rehab. And so that sent me out of state to my very first rehab. And that was sort of the first starting point of a change.
A 5150 is an involuntary committal, right?
Yeah, it's a psychiatric hold, but it was actually more than a 5150 because 5150 is only 3 days, but they can hold you longer if they feel they need to evaluate you more. So I actually stayed for 10 days, which is pretty abnormal. That's a pretty intense hold.
wow. Okay. So, all right, keep taking us through the story. So, yeah.
Oh gosh. So after that, I went to a rehab facility. I was selling my parents' insurance, and they were looking for rehabs that would take me. Rehab is ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
And but my parents, they found one, a really good one, actually, in Las Vegas. And Vegas, I thought, was a very interesting choice to go get sober.
I don't understand that at all.
Here's the thing. We had very few options. So it was kind of like our hands are tied a little bit. So that was one thing. But two, surprisingly, there's actually incredible recovery in Vegas. You can imagine that where there's the
there's probably a ton of addiction. There's probably a ton of addiction in Vegas, right? So a lot of people probably need the help.
Yeah, precisely. So I actually, I was shipped out to Vegas. I stayed in an in-house residential facility for 3 months, got clean, got sober, was able to kind of understand what addiction was a little more. And, I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, I actually tell people all the time, I actually love rehab. I wish I can go to rehab without having to actually need to be sober, because it's like it was the first time you get close friendships. It's also like life is so busy, so ongoing, and the stress of life, you never get a pause. And this is like a pause. This is like all of a sudden you don't work anymore. You don't, and when you get there, you have to earn privileges. So you don't get your cell phone. It's the first time in my adult life I've been disconnected from any social outlets. I have to have good behavior and things like that to use the phone. And even when I can call certain approved people on the phone, like my family, I can only talk for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then you kind of, as you get further in the program, you can talk a little longer, but never more than, I remember never more than like 20-minute phone calls. And, you only have certain times that you can call. So it's really rigid, and you're pretty much out there by yourself, completely alone, away from everything you've ever known. And it's kind of scary, but it's also kind of like what you need.
Yeah.
So I do that. I come back home, and right afterwards, I'm thinking like life is just I'm great. This is great. That's all I needed. I just needed to get clean, sober. I could start life again. We're good. So I had always wanted to move to Los Angeles. And, nobody in my family really knows anything about recovery either. We are all kind of ignorant to like what this is and, completely. And so I'm thinking, well, I'm healed now, drugs are away, just don't do drugs. I'm not really understanding that like there's a deeper issue at hand here, and that drugs are inevitable to come back as a coping mechanism without those things being addressed. And so I get out to LA. I'm living with my aunt and uncle who have a place out in San Pedro, and I start working. And pretty quickly after I get out there, I start smoking weed again. And now at this time, it's right on the cusp that California actually allows you to get weed with a doctor's appointment. So these aren't real doctors. They're just people that you go and you're like, I get headaches or something, and they're like, okay, here's some weed. And so this is like the time. So I have some friends, I'm following some friends, groups that are just doing the same stuff. And before I know it, it was crazy how quickly it moved from just smoking weed to like, now I actually go hardcore into for a very brief period of time, but I had gotten to the place where I was doing heroin for a little bit, and not for very long, thankfully, because heroin scared the living crap out of me, if I'm being honest. I remember the one. Well, I started with smoking. I never snorted it. I started with smoking it off just tinfoil, but I never could feel it. I thought it was like, I didn't, and so then I never shot it myself. I had people who shot me up, but that's when it scared me, because I remember taking my, I had friends, like we would go to Skid Row down there to get this stuff. And it's just a dirty world. It's just, and it scared me. And actually, like I said, I didn't do it very long because I was so terrified. Because one thing I always said to myself is I would never, ever, ever use a needle, ever. And here I am. And I'm telling you, when that hits your stream, the bloodstream, it's unlike anything. I understand why people do it. It's unlike anything. You feel the warmth just go through every single vein in your body. And it just takes over your whole body instantly. It's instant. It's messed up. And quite frankly, I've never felt more low in my life than in the lowness was the shame. I felt so ashamed. I knew what I had just done. And I knew that I was like, oh, I'm that person now. I was always very aware of that. And that's what I just couldn't live with that. And so I called my friend in Seattle who actually was in recovery himself. And I told him, I was like, I didn't know who to tell. Because I had just gotten out of rehab. I've only been out for like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. I don't even know, not even a year. And here I am, and I just shot heroin.
Wow. I
said, I got to nip this in the butt before this gets worse. But I was too ashamed to call my mom. I mean, they were all just so proud of me. I just, gotten out of rehab, and I didn't know what to do. And so I called my friend in Seattle, and I told him, and he basically just told me, he's like, you got to woman up. He's like, there's no easy way around this. You got to tell them what you did. You got to tell them you need help, and you got to leave LA. And I said, bro, you do not understand. And he's like, yeah, I do. He was like, what do you want? And I needed that. And his funny thing, I want to be very clear. This is actually a really interesting experience, right? Because this is kind of ties back into some of the things we'll probably touch on in a little bit about being sensitive with the truth. So somehow the truth is offensive in itself. No. See, this is an example. Like of how truth is absolutely needed. I needed somebody to stare me in the face and say, no, this is the truth. You're going to destroy yourself. And so because of that conversation, I called my mom right after and I told her what happened. I probably destroyed her in that conversation. That woman has been through so much on my, oh man. And she told me I can come home, which was to Sacramento. And so I went home to my aunt and uncle's. I put as much as I could in my Honda Civic. It was like a 97 Honda Civic I had at the time. And I never moved away from a place. So I called my boss at Pinkberry, which I was working at a Pinkberry right there off the coast in Hermosa Beach. And I said, I quit. I'm sorry to do this. I normally would put 2 weeks in. He understood. Thankfully, he was a good guy. And I left and I drove back to Sacramento that very next morning. And here I was now. I had no job. I was at my parents' house. And, it's like, well, do you go to rehab again? We decided that because we don't know anything, we decided that, I just needed a job and I would go to like outpatient rehab. So I went to like outpatient rehab through I want to say it was Kaiser maybe, or I don't know. I've been to so many outpatients. Outpatient rehab is a joke, by the way. I don't know anybody it's worked for. That's not to say it hasn't, but you need to lock me up, because I will not show up in those circumstances. I will for a while, and then eventually, so I kind of went through that. I got a job, but then I started kind of the party scene again. And what happened is like my parents weren't really aware of it. Eventually I got into my own place again, and it just got really bad. And then eventually I had to, I kind of had another blackout like years later. I want to say there's probably a few years now going on where I'm just running, going out there to the, party scene down, Midtown Sacramento, living it up with my friends, doing whatever crazy stuff. And I had an incident where actually I was living with my stepsister and her husband. It was like a little 3-bedroom apartment, but I had already gone back on like speed stuff. And so I was like not sleeping. So I would stay up for like days at a time. And one night, and I think I was like blacking out at times because I was also combining with Xanax and stuff. So I thought I had been going to bed.
Up, and you got to fall asleep. So you take Xanax to go to sleep and you're mixing stuff.
Messed up. It's just such a messed up. Yeah. And so long story short, it came to the part where they, they were worried, so they called my parents and they're like, we think Nancy's using again, blah, blah, blah. I don't know the full story. Once again, this is a part where my memory is just completely shot. But it led to me getting arrested, kind of. The cops had to come and because I was kind of making the scene. And this is actually like out of a movie. I remember they didn't really arrest me. They cuffed me and they put me in the back of the car, but they didn't take me to jail. They took me to the mental health hospital because they knew I was like out of my mind. And so I remember getting to the hospital and I was like kind of freaking out like at people. And it took like 6 men to hold me down because I was making a scene in the ER. And all I remember is getting stabbed in the leg and I was out. So they had actually tranquilized me to calm me down. And then I woke up in a mental health hospital, which is a completely separate hospital. And so that happened. And then I basically had to go back to rehab. I came home to an intervention and all my whole family's around. They have their little notes prepared. And I was like, oh, I know what this is. And I didn't fight them. I never thought that would happen to me.
The intervention. I never had to deal with one of those, thank God. Well, Ocean's saying, he says, Ann sounds like he's very familiar with this. So, I mean, I've shared on the show before. My thing was Adderall because I was working night shifts. So I started taking Adderall to work these night shifts to get through the night shift. And the problem was you would take an Adderall, the night shift would be over and you'd be wired out of your face. So I would then go and take trazodone to come down. And I was doing something very similar. It was because I would be up for 2 days and then I'd be so strung out from not sleeping that my temper would flare. I mean, this is what led to the most difficult point in my marriage maybe a decade ago. Like this was, yeah, it's very similar to what led to my conversion. Like, not my, I don't like saying conversion. Like like I was away from the sacraments during this time, and I was working like a maniac, working night shifts, and I was taking Adderall, and then it led to like the disintegration of my marriage because of that stuff. So it's, I very much relate to the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I mean, yeah, long story short, I ended up going back to rehab. And then I had a period there of 4 years where I was actually clean and sober. I was doing pretty good. Like I had gotten a job working at Amazon. I'd worked my way up in, to being a supply chain manager, which I was pretty proud of, because that's a job that most people had to, they got it because they got college degrees. And here I was, I have no college degree. I have, but I'm a hard worker. That's the one thing I always had. I was always a hard worker, thankfully. And so I got this professional job now, and then I became a general manager. And, I'm realizing like, hey, I actually not like completely as stupid as I thought I was. And, I'm feeling pretty good. And then I was in a relationship during this time. This is like the longest slow relationship I had. And that relationship dissolved. And then we went right into COVID. And I'm living alone during COVID. And that was like the worst probably period of my entire life. I lived alone, COVID, nobody's hanging out anymore. I'm like so isolated. It's not even funny. All I do is work. And, Amazon is not really, they believe that your whole life should be work. So when I say I was working, I mean, I was a salaried manager at the time. So running a team of like 250 people. So it was nothing but work. So my life was literally just survive work and then come home and then have nothing. And on top of that, you go through this breakup and you just feel destroyed. And I'm not doing drugs. So I actually do feel everything. And eventually it turns into, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And eventually I do relapse again. And this time it was with methamphetamine. And thankfully that was a very short period. I had like a 3-month run. And, I think we're skipping a major point though. So the question I think that should enter now is, when did the transgender discussion kind of come in?
Yeah.
And this, I would say the period between, so as far as we know at this point, I'm only a lesbian.
Because now you're getting into the craziness of what's going on in the culture, right? So the earlier part of the story we're talking about, like, the trans thing isn't really coming into it, right? But that's why I was asking before, like, are you going to therapists and stuff? So now it's 2020. The insanity of the George Floyd thing just happens, and then the trans stuff just explodes everywhere.
Yeah, sorry, I'm laughing because some people in the chat are funny.
You're like your brother looking at the chat.
I actually pushed it off to the side so I wouldn't look at it. But
yeah, forget the chat, because then Charles is in the chat.
Sorry. Dang it. So yeah, the transgender thing came. So here's the crazy thing. I really only started feeling. So when I went to my second rehab, the one right before, I had a 4 years clean. I had gone to a rehab. Actually, a friend of mine had paid out of pocket for me to go. I had just huge blessing in that. And they first sent me to one rehab, and I ended up getting switched over to another one. We don't need to go into the details of why. Nothing bad, just money, finance, stuff like that. So the first rehab I went to, the very first therapy session that I had walked into this lady's office for my session, and mind you, I have short hair. I have you've seen the pictures, I'm sure. I have a buzzed head. I look like a little boy girl. Yeah. I certainly don't look like a boy, but I look like a boyish girl. And so I walk in there, and she literally doesn't even let me say anything. Literally, doesn't let me say a single word. She literally just looks at me and says, basically, like, I think that you're struggling with, I know what the problem is. I think you're struggling with gender dysphoria or something like that.
That's the answer, right? Oh, all this stuff, it's because you're a boy.
Well, and to be honest with you, the transgender conversation wasn't really super big yet, and I hadn't really heard much about it. The only reason I knew anything about it was because I had a friend in high school who who ended up fully transitioning, is still transitioning to this day. And I knew about it because they used to always tell me that I was transgender. Like they diagnosed me way early on. So I guess I kind of always had the planted seed from a long time ago, but I never paid any mind because I never actually felt like I wanted to be a boy. But as time went on, I would start questioning why I'm dressing like a boy. And I do, I'm more attracted to this. I don't even like saying it out loud anymore because it's just so far from what I feel in my heart anymore. But I started toying with the idea, and then when this therapist told me this, I actually pushed back on it because I was actually really uncomfortable because I had already had thoughts. It was like a secret conversation. Once again, I'm kind of in that secrecy again, but now it's with this like trans issue. Like before, when I was growing up, it was about the gay stuff, but I had already come out and that was already well established in my life. I had been living that way for a long time. And now I've kind of back in the secrecy of like this internal feeling of something. I'm trying to make sense of this new narrative that's sort of breaking the scene of like, now there's this thing called transgenderism. And I remember seeing, like, I knew there was something as like a transsexual because I remember we'd go to Mexico and I would see men who would be dressed up as women. They were like the kind of the prostitutes. And I remember being confused by looking at that when I was a kid in like Tijuana. And I was just like, what is that? Like, I didn't know. Like, I really didn't know. And I remember that being a thing. And I thought now it's like this mainstream thing. And I have no idea. And I'm like, am I really that? And so, but I met this therapist. She told me this and I pushed back mostly because I was not willing to have that discussion. I had thought about certain ideas of it. I would have never said that that's what I was, but it had entered my mind and I just was not even trying to have that conversation. I got mad at her because I said, why are you saying that? And I said that. And she was like, and I said, is it because my hair is short? Like, is it just because my hair is short? Like, would you say that if I had come in here with long hair? She goes, it's not just that. And she was like, well, let's just talk more. And so we talked a little bit, but I never saw her again after that because I changed rehabs. And that was the last time I talked to her. But that stuck with me for a while because she was the mental health professional in the room, you know? So I kind of went in and I went to this other rehab and it kind of stuck with me. But now, so for the 4 years I'm clean, now the transgender conversation in the culture is just blown up. I'm actually the person I was dating at the time had family members who were fully transitioning. I had friends from my past who I'd seen who are now fully transitioning. And now it's like kind of touching every facet of life in a big way. And all of a sudden I'm being asked my pronouns. And I hated the pronoun. Everyone knew I hated the pronoun movement. I thought it was so stupid from the very beginning. But you can't really express those things early on or you get ostracized. People eventually became one of those things where you're like, well, now you have to answer it or else. Because once again, this whole idea is that it makes so much more sense now because the reason that you have to establish pronouns is because the whole underlying, I think, structure of this like movement was to confuse. It was to force a false anthropology from the beginning. So now it's not like, oh, it's a choice to have pronouns. It's like, no, you have to have pronouns because this is the nature of things. We're establishing a new natural law, if you will. And so if you don't it's not even like, you don't get to have a choice not to have pronouns. It's just how things are. And so anyway, eventually I kind of succumbed to that. Not to everybody. I didn't go around telling anybody my pronouns. It was mostly just to get people off my back if they were really aggressive in moments. And so you kind of just were like, okay, he, she, I don't know. And so, but I'm getting more exposed and I have all this internal stuff that's kind of going on. And eventually, kind of, once again, I'm in isolation when COVID hits and I have this breakup that happened. Mind you, this breakup is with a woman. And at the time I would have said that's the most intense relationship I'd ever had. And they actually ended up kind of leaving for a man. And that's kind of, I think, what tipped me over the edge. I thought, okay, well, in order to keep love, I have to actually just be a man now. I didn't logically think of it that way, but in my head, I realized, like, if I had been a man, this wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? And so I kind of was struggling with that. And then finally, I changed my name to Roman. Not legally, just... You didn't really have to do it legally. There's a lot of companies. What's that?
You started asking people to call you that.
the people I knew that would, yeah. I never brought it to my family. I never asked my brother Josh. I never any of that. But I definitely like my, just the people in my life, which was a lot, that I knew would be okay with that. And yeah, so people started calling me that. And I had my paperwork at my job at the time was Starbucks. They only knew me as Roman because you don't have to legally change your name to go by something you want to go by, and they'll protect your other what they call dead name at the time. So the people there only knew me as Roman. And yeah, now it's like the socially transitioned into this boy, but I'm not really still like, I had a few people in my life who were like, we support this. So we want you to know that we're allies and whatever, but we also want you to think, just really ask all the questions. And I said, okay, that's fair. And I said, I would do that with anything, So I started going down a rabbit hole of asking all the questions. And I was like, does this really make sense? And then I kind of came to the conclusion through my own research that if there is a way to heal this discomfort I have in my body, this idea, what I want to keep my body as it is and just feel comfortable in that, or what I want to go through this, all these surgeries and like these hormone therapy and possibly really screw my head up even more than it already was. I think anybody in their the right mind would as right mind as you can be if you're transgender. Anybody thinking somewhat clearly would probably say they just want to keep the body they had. And so then it became clear. I thought, well, the next phase of questioning this narrative is I have to bring it to therapy, and I have to ask, what is the path forward for if I just want to heal from this? Like, why can't, like, instead of transitioning, so I started asking questions to my therapist that didn't make sense to me. I thought, well, because I would tell them, and my mistake was that I told them that I identified as male. But then I followed it up with basically, I think that this could be something that you could be healed from. And I'd rather try to do that. Well, then that's when I was accused of like internalized transphobia. And now here's the crazy thing is, well, and they actually, it's really confusing because she wasn't like mad at me when she accused me of that. She was actually really being that like toxic sort of loving. It was
empathetic.
Like she was right. It was like she was like, oh, like it was kind of like an oh honey, like you only feel this way because
you just hate yourself, but you need to come to the reality.
Right.
This is completely off topic, and and this is more of an aside for a possible show idea. What if we sent you to a therapist to see what you all have internalized? I think that would be an amazing show.
Well, no, what I was going to say is like, if somebody who's struggling with the things that you're struggling with at the time, you start adding testosterone into the mix. Like, do you have any idea what that would do to your mental state? Like, you wonder why you have all these trans people committing all these atrocities throughout the culture. It's because you start putting chemicals like that into and hormones like that into somebody who's already dealing with this internal battle like you're dealing with. Like, you don't know what happens to a person like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's definitely very true. And that was one of my concerns was like, by the way, at this point, I've been diagnosed with I was like a little, test rat for big pharma at this point. I mean, I had been on every single psychedelic, psychiatric medication you could possibly think of, everything from like SSRIs to like intense doses of like lithium, everything in between. So it's like, I tried the world's methods. I mean, there's actually, I don't know very many people who have tried the world's methods more than I have. I mean, I did mainstream psychology. I did every single drug that I accepted every single diagnosis they gave me. I searched, I really, believe it or not, I really wanted to know what was wrong with me. But it was a lot of disorder to figure out, and no coherent truth at all in any of it. That's part of what Catholicism just blew me away afterwards. Obviously, I had a miraculous conversion at the Mass, which we'll probably get into. But I mean, my point is that it was after the fact that I was like, the church knew something about me. she knows something about the human person. Like, she is not arbitrary. You know what I mean? Like, she's precise. And that's like it. I mean, people, that's why it's so easy to see when somebody doesn't really know their faith, because it's like, you don't understand how well the church knows you. And that there's like a reason for everything. And so anyway.
Okay, so this point in 2020 comes, you're alone. Like, what is it that leads to this conversion? Like, let's try to get to that point so that we can, because I do want to get to other topics. So let's bring us to that.
Well, after I had been accused of internalized transphobia, this was like the peak. I had hit a new level of like absolute desperation and loneliness and just complete and total. I was just very disturbed, and I was so depressed, and I had already been suicidal my whole life, but now I was actually, I was done because nobody in my family knew what was going on with me. I couldn't really go to them anymore. It was like I would say now, it was like the devil had cut me and isolated me off from anything that could possibly be the answer in a way that I had understood. So now therapy, which was always there for me when my family didn't understand me, now therapy is clearly not there for me. Like the answer is not there. And I know this. And I'm like thinking, it doesn't even matter which therapist I go to, because at this time, and this is part of what the horrible part of this was, is that there were laws they were doing the affirmation model of care. So every single therapist had to affirm in California, if you said you're a transgender, they had to affirm that. They had to affirm that because, or else they'd lose their license. So there was no safe place to really land. And I realized I was actually completely alone for the first time in my life. I was completely alone because even my friends, so the people on the Christian side of my friends group, like my mom, my family, I knew they couldn't help me with this because they didn't understand what I was going through. But even now, my own friends on the trans and the gay side, they also can't help me because they also subscribe to this idea that that you are just trans. Like they don't, you know what I mean? And so like nobody in my life, I know nobody who can help me. And that's a different level of isolation that I've never experienced in my life. Never since, never before. I wish that on nobody. And I decided that was I decided that, I wrote a letter to everybody in my family that I was saying goodbye. And it was a horrible, horrible night.
You were that far.
Sorry?
You were that far. You wrote a note.
Yeah, I left them on my iPad.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wanted to write something to everybody in my family because I had different things to say to different people. And sometimes they were just like a single sentence. Like I don't want to make it seem like I wrote this like long book. I think I wrote the most to my mom. But to my little sister, for instance, I basically just said, I'm sorry that I wasn't the big sister you should have been able to count on, stuff like that. And, I really felt bad. I kind of had this really strong belief that I spent the better part of 15 years trying to fix me and trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with me. Because at that point, it was so clear that what I was going through was destroying my family. And you can't exist in not knowing what the solution is to life and knowing that not knowing is killing your family. And it's like your very existence becomes painful for people. So it's like, if I kill myself, it's going to be painful for them. And if I don't kill myself, it's also going to be painful for them. So I'm at this place now where the outcome of both is the same. So my realization was that if I kill myself, it will be painful, but it will only be painful for a time. And at least they'll have a chance to heal. And obviously that's a terrible conclusion to come to, but that's where I was. And so I got to the point where I was just about to do this, the unthinkable act, sitting in my room, iPad left for them to find it on my desk. And right before I go to do it, I'm not going to reveal what it was. It's too personal. But right before I was about to do it, I get this thought that just shoots through my head. And it's like, it's not my thought. That's the funny thing. I know it's not my thought because I didn't think it. I don't know how to explain it. It felt like I got hit by a 2x4 almost. But it was a thought that I couldn't stop. And the thought was, what if the pain doesn't end here? What if it actually gets worse? And in that moment, when I tell you that I felt like I was physically being suffocated, like it felt like the walls were closing in on me. Like I was like so terrified. And in that desperation, it felt like I was a caged animal. Like I couldn't escape. It was like all of a sudden being confronted with this question, this realization, something, this existential, whatever it was. And I have nowhere to go and I'm cornered. And in that desperate moment, I dropped to my knees for the very first time. And I literally begged God. I said, if you're real, you have to show me. And tears are just streaming down my face. And I said, I'm really stupid. So you have to make it obvious because I have to know. Like, if you're real, like, who am I not to follow you? Like, but, so it's not like I'm not following you because of anything of like outright denial. I don't even know if you're real, And so I ended up passing out from exhaustion, falling asleep. And mind you, I want to preface it. My brother had become Catholic a few years prior, like we'll say 3, I don't know. So he had already been Catholic. And the next morning I wake up and I'm sitting in my suicide room with my plan all around me still, which is a surreal feeling you're like, it almost feels like you survived something close up, but you're like, not sure if that's a good thing yet, or you're not sure if, whatever. It's a weird feeling, but I go to the side dresser of my bed and I see right on top of everything, it's just like a junk drawer, there's a rosary. And I forget that it's called a rosary. And at the time, I actually didn't even know where I had gotten it. My brother had given me a rosary a couple of years prior, and it ended up in a junk drawer. And this is actually why we give away rosaries. We give them away because we don't expect people to use them, but we expect our Blessed Mother to put them in the person's life when and where they need them. So it's not your job to make sure they start praying the rosary. It's just your job to keep giving rosaries out because our Blessed Mother will make sure it's available when that person needs it. So I'd just like to say that at this point. Anyway, so I go in there and I don't really know what it is. I forget what it's called. So I go on Google. I figure out what it is. It's a prayer necklace or, whatever. And I see the Sorrowful Mysteries and I start praying the Sorrowful Mysteries. I thought, what can I lose? For all I know, I could just be saying a prayer to nothing. And that the worst case scenario, nothing happens. So I pray it. And I felt a really intense peace, but I wouldn't have connected it to God or anything, but it prompted me to keep praying. So I prayed the Sorrowful Mysteries, just reading them off the page, off the screen for 3 days in a row. And on the third day, I got that same sort of like abrupt thought, the same thing as that stopped me in my tracks before I killed myself. And this time the thought was go see a priest. And mind you, I'm just telling you, like, it's the weirdest thing. Now I know that signal graces are a thing. So like when you pray the rosary, Our Lady is, she's one of the promises is signal graces. And I would say now that this is what I was getting. Although at the time I had no idea what was going on, but it was obvious that these were not my thoughts. Like I knew it because it was almost like I was having a conversation with myself, but it was my thought, but it wasn't coming from me. It felt like a directive. It was really weird because I heard, I didn't hear anything audible or anything, but I remember thinking like, go see a priest. Like I would never have that thought. That's just the weirdest thing.
Especially
so
because
I texted my
right. You have no idea about Catholicism. You're just hearing your brother converted to it. But we're at an hour and 18 minutes, and this is the point in the show where we switch over to local. So if you guys want to hear the rest of the show, I made that joke last time. I won't do it to you.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I do remember you making that joke last time. You got to get a subscription.
So if you guys want to hear where God actually intervenes in this story, we'll make you pay. We're gonna finish this.
Oh my! You are the worst.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get this thought that you have to go see a priest.
Yeah, I go. So I text my brother. I said, "Where do you go to church?" Because I had already gone to church with him one time because he really wanted me to go to a mass, and I didn't. I was just doing it because I wanted to be a good sister. Blah blah blah. But I do remember that. So I know he went to a parish, but I thought the best parish to go to would be his, and I didn't remember where it was. So I just texted him and I asked him. He sent me a text back, and he told me where. And then he wanted to know why, but I wanted nothing to do with. I wasn't trying to be Catholic in my head. I wasn't trying to be Catholic. So I didn't want him to know anything. So I didn't want the pressure of feeling like, oh, now he thinks I'm going to be Catholic. And so he kind of left it alone. He didn't pressure me or anything. He just gave me where he went because I had forgotten where it was. And I called him up and I said, hey, I'd like to talk to a priest. And here I am thinking, I don't really know why, to be honest. I don't know what I'm going to tell this guy. I just know that I want to know if God's real. And so I ended up getting a hold of one of the priests, and the priest decided that he would meet me that night. And I went into the parish and I talked to him. We talked for quite a while, and essentially he told me,
you walk into this parish. What are you wearing? What do you look like? Like at this, because we're all seeing pretty Nancy sitting here with her sweater on and her makeup and her hair done. What does Nancy look like as this priest?
I was like, shoot, I wish I could send Rob the picture and he could just put it on the screen.
I could if you wanted to.
Really?
Yeah.
Here, I'll send you something.
This is probably an important bit of context. Like you don't look
put it in the
like you do now.
You can either put it on your screen and share your screen, or email or DM it to me on Twitter, whatever you want to do.
Okay, that's what I'll do. I'll DM it on Twitter just so I can.
Because I remember last time, while you're doing that, I remember last time you mentioning that when you walked into the parish, you just felt so out of place because, I mean, you're talking about a Latin Mass parish, right? Like it's a traditional parish that you walked into, and
yeah,
I mean, Nancy's on the verge of transitioning at this point in her life, and she's walking in looking like a girl that's about to transition, and she has very short hair and she's wearing basketball shorts or something. And I remember because she told us last time. I'm not just making that up.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how I looked because I always had like a bunch of different colored hair. But I do know, I mean, this is close enough. Holy cow, I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to derail the show like that. You can send it after. We'll put it up after. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So anyway, I'll just send you this one. It's close enough.
Okay.
That's with my blonde hair. But yeah.
Ocean, you were put in timeout because she was getting to a very emotional part of the story, and you're thinking it's funny to make fun of me during that period. Like, just know the room a little bit, Ocean. Like, I don't want to put you in timeout, but like, there's times where it's appropriate to make fun of Aunt, and there's times where you should just listen to the story because we're getting to the wow.
You went in looking like Justin Bieber.
You look kind of cool there. I don't know. Look pretty cool.
I went and looked like I sent you another one, the one with the green hair. That's like people have seen that one. I was actually pretty cool, you know. I wasn't. If I'm being honest,
the green hair one.
I was.
I'll put that one up. This is Nancy. So this cool kid walks into the parish to talk to the priest.
Yeah, so I don't know if I had green hair or not at the time. I can't remember. I think I probably had blonde hair. But anyway, yeah, I go see this priest, and we talk for a while. He gives me his time, and I ask him if God's real, and I'm hoping he's gonna give me like something that I can like be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, that didn't happen there because my conversion was not an intellectual one. But what he did, I think the most important thing at the very end is he offered catechism, and I said, "That guy Ferrari." Hey, Gary. I like the Justin Bieber better. Anyway, I said no, I didn't want to go to catechism because I wasn't trying to be Catholic. So I left, not really knowing why I felt called to talk to a priest, but I kind of was like, okay, well, no harm, no foul. I go home. I'm still praying the rosary. I pray it for 2 more days. Now it's early Sunday morning because I was driving for Uber on Saturday night. So I got home early Sunday morning after the bar scene was out, which is around 3 a.m. because the bars close at 2. So after the last few rides, you get home around 3. And that night, this has now been 5 days of praying the rosary once a day, the Sorrowful Mysteries. And on that night, I had the same kind of like thought that came through it. I always tell people it felt like I had an invisible rope tied around me and it was pulling me in a direction. All I had to do was just follow that pull. That's how easy this was. That's why like I try to overemphasize like none of this was me. I just was like I was allowing myself to be pulled. You know what I mean? And that was like that's how it felt. So anyway, for what that's worth. So I get this thought again, this thought that just enters my head. It's like, now go to the mass. And I said, okay, so I followed this thought. And this is actually where I felt very, like, I didn't have the language at the time, but now it was probably a spiritual attack. But when I got to the parish, I decided I was going to look up the same parish, and I was going to figure out when they had mass. And they had a 7 a.m. mass, and I thought, well, I'll just stay awake and go to the first mass so I can come home and sleep. So I get to the parish, and man, the second I get there, it was like, I'm telling you, inside, it was like a war you've never seen. Hollywood could not write scripts as good as this, because I was so afraid all of a sudden, like, just, and it took everything in my body, just one step in front of another to make it to the door. And all I could hear in my head was, like, these, just like, my thoughts felt very loud. It was like, you don't belong here. You don't, just get out of here. These people are going to hate you. Just everything you could possibly imagine. And then on the other side, I felt this like very calming voice that was just like, keep walking, keep walking. And so I guess I kind of like dissociated, I think, a little bit during that period, because I just kept looking at the ground. I just remember looking at my feet and just watching one foot go to the next. And then I make it to the parish doors, and I get in, and, everybody's very traditional, and I look like I belong at a pride parade. And thankfully, I don't want to be seen, though. Because I just, like, I really don't want people to see me. I want to be hidden in the back. I just want to figure out why I'm here at this mass. And I go sit down, and I sit in the very far seat. There's a seat right next to the confessionals in our parish, and it's actually right next to the door. And that was perfect for me, because I could sit there and I could kind of like bolt up the door if I needed to. And it was in the very back. Like, no, everybody's back was turned toward me. I mean, I'm sure a few people saw me, but the majority of the attention was forward facing. And I'm still feeling like this intense anxiety, and I'm about to leave. Like, I don't know how long I made it in the mass, but I'm about to, like, just be done. And so I'm ready about to leave, and all of a sudden I catch the glimpse of this little red candle, which is at the very front of the mass. Obviously, I don't know what the red candle means, but for anyone who doesn't know, it means that our Lord is present in the tabernacle. The Eucharist is in the tabernacle, but I didn't know any of that, and so I catch the glimpse of this little red candle, and it totally captivates me. And I can, and it's the only thing that really kept me in my chair, because all I could hear in my head was keep looking at me. And that just over and over and over. And that was the candle. And I remember, it's funny, because I have people now who have since heard my story who go to my parish. And one lady came up to me, and she was like, I saw you that day. And she was like, you would not stop looking. I didn't know you were looking at the candle, but I saw you gazing, your eyes. She's like, you didn't even blink. And I was like, well, I don't, so it was kind of interesting to hear other people's point of views of that. She's like, I thought you were on drugs. I wasn't, actually, but for once. So anyway, I heard that, and all of a sudden I heard an organ play, and then I just instantly, it was like I felt the most intense, most radical love I'd ever felt in my entire life. Like, it just shook me to my core. And here I am now, trying to be anonymous at the back of the mass, and I'm just like weeping like I've never wept in my entire life. Like, something just instantly changed me, yet nothing about me changed at all. I mean, I always say that because it's like, I like to not misconstrue that, because people think, oh, you changed them. Well, what does that mean? No, my heart changed. Like, something changed me, but I had a lot of changing left to do. So there's a difference. But I never felt that kind of love in my entire life. And instantly I knew that was like God saying, okay, you needed me to make it obvious for you. So I did. And that was something I could not ignore. And I realized he had answered my question from 5 days earlier when I had asked him to make it obvious to me. That was the moment. And from the very next day, I started catechism, and I actually accepted every single precept, every single teaching of the church before I even knew what it was. Because I knew I didn't have the authority to say any of it. I knew that if there was something about church teaching that I didn't understand, I knew that God would help me understand it in time. And so I'd already known, I guess, in that moment, for whatever that was that I felt, because it was so powerful, I knew that I wasn't it anymore. I wasn't the main story anymore. I knew that if this was Christ's church, whatever she said, whatever she taught, that was going to be true. I was all of a sudden realizing I was the insufficient one. And I didn't have any reason to be able to disregard teaching. So I accepted the teaching before I even knew what it was. And so I started catechism the next day. I got confirmed later that year, September 29th, feast day of St. Michael. And I've been a Roman Catholic ever since. That was September 29th, 2023. But that conversion day happened on March 19th, 2023. So I always like to say it because it's something I found out after the fact, was that Our Lady through the Rosary brought me to the church on the feast day of St. Joseph to meet their son Jesus. And I mean, that you just can't make that stuff up. So it's kind of crazy.
So I'm going to be on with your brother next week, and I think he wants to talk about my reversion story a little bit. But I had it's interesting because I think when someone comes to a point where they're like, God, if you're real, you have to show me. But but you're genuinely open to it, right? And you're just like, you come to the point where you're like, all right, if you reveal yourself to me, like I will commit myself to you. Because I had a very real moment like that as well. And it was like God just removes all doubt from your mind completely. And you're just like, I am all in, and I believe everything the church teaches. And you, like, when you have that moment, such an overwhelming feeling, and you're floating on a cloud for days after when God reveals himself to you like that. Like you're just on this high where you're just like, it's indescribable when you have an experience of God's love like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, you don't just change your whole life as dramatically as I did overnight if you didn't experience something.
Yeah.
That is actually insanity if you didn't actually have an experience, you know. It would have been impossible without that.
So I do, man, because I want to go so many different places with this now. Because you've told this story on air, but it's such a great story that I definitely wanted to do this again. We're obviously not going to do locals tonight. We'll keep it all on here because I want everybody to hear this, because a few questions are like, I'm sure you wanted to talk to your brother right away about all this stuff, right? Because he's the only Catholic you really know at this point, right?
I guess I don't really know. I don't remember the exact how it happened. Yes, I did. I think I kept the experience kind of like I don't recall a lot of like exactly how it unfolded.
I was friends with Josh when this happened, by the way. Like mine and Josh's friendship had already started, because I like when this happens, he's like, please pray for my sister. My sister's going through something right now. Like, and I think my sister's coming into the church. And I remember him being like overwhelmed with excitement about what you were going through at the time. And he's like, just please keep us in. And also, like, I know other family members of yours have come into the church since then. And, you know, because Josh and I talk a lot too. It's like, it's kind of, it's like when my reversion happened and I started taking my faith seriously, it was like I dragged a ton of people into the church with me too. God starts like lighting people around you on fire for him, and it's a really awesome thing when that happens. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, for me it was I recall being excited about becoming Catholic. I was very like excited to go through catechism. I had the really awesome luxury of being privately catechized by a traditional priest from the FSSP. So I didn't realize what a luxury that was until later on. It turns out I missed the class period. So I got to just go one-on-one, which got me a lot of like individual attention if I had questions or whatever. So I got to do that. I was excited for that. I was excited for the process, but I was also like, I mean, to be honest with you, it was actually really difficult. Not because I never questioned God from that point on. But wrestling and questioning are different. Not even wrestling with God per se, but wrestling with now, what does this require of me? And that's terrifying, because now you have my life is literally black and white. You know, this was one way of living, and now being Catholic is going to be a whole new way of living. You know, you lose people. You have to be misunderstood. You know how many times I've been told that I was just like, because nobody knows my conversion story, so they think I was just like brought into a cult. You know, I get people who think, oh yeah, those who fall for transgenderism, of course, would fall for like religious, you know, cultism or whatever. So I get a lot of reactions, but you know, now I've more strong in my faith, so it doesn't really bother me the same way. But like, it's not something that I was unfazed by early on. I was terrified of what
your whole life, everybody you know knows you as one thing, and then all of a sudden you have this radical change of heart. And
Yeah.
the thing is, those people think you're brought into a cult, but in your own experience, what you're experiencing is that true freedom that you thought you got when you came out. But now all of a sudden you're actually finding freedom in Christ, right? Like the truth will set you free. And there's a peace that's coming about in your life at this point that never any therapist or gender ideology ever could have brought you. So regardless of what they're saying, you know what's happening in your heart.
Yeah, well, I think freedom, oh man, I would say I wasn't free just yet. I would say I would have probably identified it as freedom because it felt more like freedom than anything I'd ever felt before. But I think freedom is an ongoing purification. And you start to kind of get released from the shackles the more you participate in the sacramental life. So freedom has changed sort of and has become more realized. I've become more Catholic. But what I felt that day was that I had inherent value. And I was loved in that. And it redefined love for me. I didn't know how to define love yet, but I knew that whatever I thought love was out there, I knew instantly that just shattered that. And I didn't necessarily know how to articulate what I just felt yet. But I knew that whatever I had previously believed about love and all these things that had held up this false identity, it just demolished it. It was like, it was not even a question. It was like, you know what I mean? So I would say that's where I don't know how to explain that, but yeah.
So you're one of two people I know who struggle with struggle with same-sex attraction and drugs and all. Like, you're one of two people I know who their encounter with God and the faith completely transformed their lives. One of them is a family member who was the person I mentioned earlier in the story who, like, when they were kids, it was him and another family member that got caught when they were kids, and the parents kind of freaked out, and that led him down a really difficult path. And he was struggling with same-sex attraction and all this stuff. And in the past couple of years, I've watched a conversion on a level you can't imagine, to the point where right now him and I are praying novena to Saint Jose Maria Escriva together. You know, so it's like there's a genuine conversion, and then there's this fake conversion. Not I don't want to call it even a conversion. There's two different paths that are being presented to people with same-sex attraction. One is the you're talking about, which leads to living a chaste life and an actual conversion. And then there's this other false version being presented to people where it's, oh, well, God loves you and he accepts you. Don't worry about it. Now, there's another person that I know who is gay, like that. Well, they're not gay, but you know what I mean? Like, they identify as gay, and they told me they went to church for the first time. It's actually my someone my wife knows from college, and he just had told her he went to church for the first time in 20 years, but he went to a very affirming parish, and he goes,
affirming parish.
Yeah, an affirming parish, right? And he's like, well, I felt so welcome. My wife's like, did you receive communion? And he's like, well, yeah. She's like, did you go to confession? You know, he's like, no, I didn't go to confession. So my wife came to me and she was like, Anthony, how do I handle this conversation? And it's a difficult one because it's the first time he ever went. He's been to church in 20 years. So it's like, all right, he's progressing in a, at least he's like approaching God a little bit, but he also, like, he's receiving, and we all know what St. Paul says about somebody in that state who's receiving, like, you're heaping damnation upon yourself. And it's like, she's like, how do I approach this conversation? And I'm wondering what your thoughts on that are. Like, how do you think she should handle that conversation? Because he got very defensive when she asked about confession, and when, like, he got very defensive, and she was like, she doesn't want to push this person away. She wants to figure out a way to bring this person closer to God.
So my take on this is I'm just going to be honest. The truth is the only loving thing you can give to somebody. Now, here's the other thing. There are caveats. I mean, I think there's a couple issues at hand. One, I think sometimes, and I think it's easy to do this, and I do it sometimes myself. I think this is part of why the ultimate answer to this question isn't actually how does your wife respond to this person. It's actually like, what is she doing in her own life to get as close to Christ as possible so that he can speak through these confusing moments and with there being less resistance and not knowing what to do? Because I think that's the ultimate thing. Like, there's a reason the saints were so powerful in their interactions with people and why they brought so many conversions, because they had so much of themselves hollowed out that God could enter in so fully that there was like this intuition about knowing how to just be in these really confusing situations. And so I think that's one thing. And I say that not to her. I mean, that's all of us. Like, that's why I always say, like, the number one thing is just live your life as best as possible. But naturally, you're going to have these situations. But I'm trying to think. There's all sorts of caveats. The truth is that it's not loving to not tell the truth. Yeah. And the hard thing is that we think that we have more power than we do. So I think a lot of times, just like, when the whole like BLM movement happened, the trans movement happened, they weaponized truth and they called it mean. And so the truth is, I don't think your wife would ever tell this person, like, scold this person with the truth. I think there's a difference between being mean and like, I'm better than you, and just being like, I care about your soul and you have to know this. Yeah. If it's approached that way, that is the most loving thing you can do. If you let somebody walk away sometimes with not having the fullness of the truth, you're doing two things, especially if somebody's receiving our Lord. One, you're allowing our Lord to bear the cost of that. Somebody unworthily being received, that's and then two, you're helping this person damn their own soul, because we know how grievous a sin that is. And so it's a twofold thing. Now, here's the reason I think a lot of people struggle, and I'm not going to sit and say I don't struggle sometimes. It's taken a while to, like I said, to learn how to kind of navigate these situations. But the thing is that sometimes what we're really afraid of is pushing people away from the church. Here's the problem: we do not convert people. Yeah. In fact, the more we start to go down this path of, I don't want to push somebody away, you already think too highly of yourself in the economy of grace.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, and it's like we are just there to be seed planters. Now, if somebody leaves, that doesn't mean you made them leave. That means they weren't ready for the truth. There's a natural aversion to the truth when you carry concupiscence, and we don't know. I mean, what that person has to go through to finally arrive where they want the real truth. But, and that may be different for everyone, but that doesn't mean that you failed them either. That means that when they return, they're going to know what they're returning to. And they're not going to get this, like, because what good is it to bring people into the church if the church is just leading them straight to hell? It makes no sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
What's really interesting about this person is, like, they know, like, I'm not like they know I am like a traditional Catholic. Like, they know I have a Catholic podcast, right? Like, they know we go to mass every Sunday. They know we go to confession regularly. Like, they know they know all this. And in some way he couldn't wait to tell my wife he went to church, right? And when my wife started asking these things, he got a little defensive. He's like, well, I know that's what you guys do, but like, and she was just like, well, look, the way she handled it was, she goes, well, look, this is why I go to confession. And she didn't like tell him, you need to go to confession, you shouldn't be receiving. What she did was she goes, well, this is why I go to confession. And this is what, because my wife is very, like, she's never going to say something to offend somebody. Like, she's not capable of it.
Except for you.
Yeah, well, that's different. But she just explained the joy she's had in confession, and it went fine, you know what I mean? But she came to me afterward, and she was just like, I don't know what to do, because she know, like, we've taken her parents to mass and had to tell her parents they couldn't receive, and it's like, that's a tough conversation to have too. Like, you're Lutheran, we want to bring you to mass, but like, you guys have to sit out. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You don't get to receive. And these are difficult conversations you have with people. But like you said, if we just let them receive, there's not going to be any desire for them to become Catholic then anyway. Like, my desire was to bring them to the Latin Mass and not let them receive, because I want them to have that desire in their heart. But it does come down to also, you were open to hearing the truth when you did hear it. right? So you went in with that, God, show me you're real.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point you made, that we don't convert people. Like as soon as you start thinking, what do I have to say, because I'm gonna say the right words to this person, it's really not us that converts people. If somebody stumbles across this episode, right, it's not because you're saying anything, it's because some God intervened somewhere and put the grace in that person's life for them to hear something they needed to hear tonight.
It's something I struggle with so much, just because personally, like I'm just gonna sound conceited, but I'm an intellectual person, right? And like I expect everyone else to be too, and so I expect I can just logic you to the truth, and all I end up doing, and Aunt, you know this, and everyone in my family knows this, I just come off really condescending and just as an asshole, and and I have such a hard time, and I'm very bad at sharing like what the faith has done for me personally, internally, and spiritually. I have a hard time sharing that, where I can give you a list of facts, and I don't know.
Well, and I think you have to, you know, don't get me wrong. This is actually where I do want to place a few caveats. There's something to be said about, you know, truth doesn't always need to be said in every situation. Now, this particular example, we're talking about a grief sin that's happening. It's doing two things. It's offending our Lord, and it's hurting the man's soul. You have to speak, or you're complicit. That's the unfortunate. There's no in between. And now a lot of times what I've also realized is that, let's use some other examples, because this is actually a really hard thing for a lot of parents, is that they don't know how to have these conversations, and or they don't know how to be completely upright, or, you know, and they get manipulated by their kids who are not necessarily intentionally trying to manipulate them, because they really believe what they say, but they, you know, they don't think they, you know, it's a lot, but
propaganda themselves, right? So they're victims of the propaganda, and they're
brainwashed. And so essentially, what telling the truth to somebody in a loving way, I should say, really requires of the person who's put in that hard position. And I like to point this out to people too, is that it's actually, most times it is our unwillingness to carry the cross. That is a cross. You have to be willing to, and this is the hardest part about relationships. And this is why detachment is so important, and why we have to practice certain things, because the truth is that you may lose friendships. You may lose people, and you know,
it's almost,
and that's a cross.
Really.
And that's a cross. You have to be willing to carry that cross, because the truth requires that. And so now, once again, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean you just scold people. I mean, you have to really genuinely care about the person you're sitting in front of, and you have to really genuinely be like, play the tape through. This is why I'm contemplating sometimes on even like hell is so important. I recommend doing it in adoration, because when you really can understand like what the outcome of people who don't end up following Christ, what does that look like for a soul? Like, these people are, that's where we all end up. And like, imagine having that at the forefront of your mind whenever you're presented with the possibility of sharing the truth. And then not only, I think it addresses two issues when you have that in your mind. One, you don't want to just force truth, because there are people who try to force truth, and they're really doing it out of pride. They want to be right or whatever. And that's
also can alienate people. It's a delicate thing, right? So
it is
like,
delicate.
if somebody asks you a question, you're obligated to tell the truth, right? But it's a thing I struggle with even with my in-laws who are not Catholic. Like, I don't want to alienate the relationship, so I'm not like constantly telling them Catholic things, right? But when they ask a question, I always tell the truth, right? And there is like a humility you have to have as you tell that truth, and you have to
for sure
go about it delicately a lot of times. But yeah, you have an obligation to tell the truth at all times. So, but what Kelly said, Rob, the
pray and fast,
yeah, because I think too many of us don't take that seriously, right? And prayer and fasting is what converted my wife, because I, like Rob, thought I could intellectually argue my wife into the church, and it just it did not go well. Like my wife's not, she was very much like you, right? So you go in and you didn't have an intellectual conversion. I think men and women are very different like that. And I think that's a testament to show how feminine you really are, and even were, even at the time where you think you're transitioning, right? God works in a woman's heart a lot differently than he works in the man's heart, and God works in a man's brain a lot differently than he works in a woman's brain. Now, there's going to be overlap, and some women will be more intellectual, and some men will have more of an emotional conversion, sure. But for the most part, men need like the hard facts of how can I believe this? I need the proof intellectually to come in, where my wife's heart was just softened and converted because I prayed and fasted and just lived my faith out instead of trying to argue her in.
Right. Well, and this is like those two examples are very different. So once again, this isn't like if you're in a context where it's like the friend who is clearly misusing sacraments and they're interested in the Catholic faith, it's very important to correct that head on, because they're already interested in it. They need to be interested. If they're going to be interested in Catholic, to be honest, under that premise, you actually don't know if they're really actually interested in the Catholic faith. You know, they're interested in this version, this counterfeit version that's been that they've been allowed to partake in, but that we know that's not the real faith. And so the kindest thing in that situation would be to nip that in the butt. But with family members, I always tell people, it's really about relationship first. Like, you don't lead with the gay issue or your Protestant issue, or you don't, it's all about relationship. And so that's why I think it's so. And then like you said, when you ask, I think naturally sometimes I've experienced this too, and Catholicism becomes very attractive to people who know that you're Catholic, the more that you become attractive to be around. And then people start to see, like, what is it that you have? What is different? And then before you know it, these conversations have doorways to be opened. And then you get to walk through those at appropriate times, where once grace is really, so grace operates through us into others. And, and so God gives these opportunities eventually and they happen in stages. And so I think that's beautiful that you don't want to isolate. You shouldn't isolate your family. You know what I mean? Like, that would be insane to do that. That's why we don't beat people over the head with, doctrine all the time.
This is actually
who aren't Catholic.
This is a good point by Ocean, right? So, because I do know a lot of people I think would come into the church, but they have, especially sexual sin. This is important. Like, I think like, especially the porn issue and things like that. So many men are struggling with that. It's the same sense of shame they have that you had because all sexual sin leads to shame. And I think it puts a block up where people really they're terrified to come to God because they know, like, deep down what they're doing is wrong, and they're like, oh man, like I would maybe be Catholic, but like I'm not ready to stop this, But you did want to talk about the identity issue. I know that because we had that synod under Francis where, like, the preparatory documents for the first time listed, they said they addressed it as gay Catholics and LGBT Catholics and trans Catholics. And it's like the first time the church ever put that kind of language in any kind, even though it wasn't like the final document or anything, but it's really a very dangerous thing to start using that language because the identity issue is such an important one, right?
Yeah, well, and also I even like long before the Synod Group 9 issue, in my own daily experience with a lot of Catholics, either online or even in just person, there's actually a great deal of Catholics who struggle with same-sex attraction who still call themselves gay Catholics or LGBTQ Catholics. And they don't see a problem with that. Now, these are even people who are actually even following somewhat, church teaching for what you can see. They're like faithful Catholics. But there's a myriad of different like
that, right? Like they're still using that language.
Well, they're still using that language, and then they also kind of still somewhat struggle, like, to some degree. Like, there's people who actually fully live a sacramental life as best as you can see. But they, they'll still do things like live in a chaste relationship with the man that they used to date, but they live in separate rooms, and just weird kind of like dynamics that if you but they'll still refer to themselves as like gay Catholic. And I'll just be honest with you, for a long time, it was bothering me that why people would call themselves a gay Catholic or an LGBT Catholic. And I didn't know why it was bothering me. It was really an internal struggle as somebody who has come from this background. And I was like, it was like something tugging on me. I'm like, why is this bothering me so much? Like, what is it about this that doesn't make sense to me? And so I kind of I would just pray about it. And I thought about it a lot. And I started realizing I had this like aha moment where I really sat down, I broke down, as much as I could about the LGBTQ world and like the Catholic world and what the two say. And the truth is that I came to the conclusion that the reason that so my big proposal is that everybody in the church or everybody who's listening, if we just start there, if we could try to start changing our language, even when referring to people out in the world or even within the church, but especially like Catholics. Because realistically, from the Catholic viewpoint, there is actually no such thing as even a gay person, because it comes down to the understanding of what these things are. So the reason you can't be a gay Catholic or LGBTQ Catholic is because gay or LGBTQ or any of those filler words and Catholic, they're two competing frameworks. So basically, they're each trying to answer the question of who the human person is and how they ought to live well. So they're trying to do the same thing, but they have completely conflicting answers. So they literally cannot mix. It's like oil and water, so it's actually super nonsensical. You cannot say, so for instance, it's
like saying
with
a Muslim Catholic.
Yeah, it's like, it actually just doesn't make sense. And I want to say that because so many people get offended and they get hurt, and I don't want people to feel hurt. I don't want people to feel hurt. Hopefully my olive branch to them is that I can explain why it's nonsensical, not because I'm trying to hurt you, but because I actually think that that this is this very language issue. When you call yourself by your disordered, temptation, by your disordered inclination, which is what the catechism would call it, you're actually just making your life a million times harder than it has to be. And this goes on to like, can you heal from this? It answers so many questions, and it's actually very simple, but you have to understand it. So the LGBT framework and the Catholic framework is they both start with, they're both considered identities. The world considers being gay an identity, the LGBT framework an identity, right? And the church also considers, they have their own idea of identity. So the LGBT world starts with desire and feeling. And then from that desire or feeling, they say that that's what identity is. So how I feel is what I am, right? So it starts kind of in your feeling. And then eventually from that identity kind of comes a moral framework for them. That's where they get their moral sense of the world. Whereas the church starts ontologically. She says, what is the human person fundamentally? And the human person fundamentally is male, female, equals, and child of God. And so the inclination is actually just something that's experienced as a result of concupiscence. So you can imagine the church really just believes and has always maintained that this is just something that is a result of concupiscence. And so it is not who you are. But you can imagine if someone keeps calling themselves something day after day, and how that fractures your sin. Like you can't fully, it makes chastity, which is what the church calls us to, 10 times harder, because you start to see it as an impossible thing. For instance, like people don't believe you can heal from this. Let me explain this. People say, well, can you, I will say that in my experience, I've fully healed, but I want to explain what that healing means from the same-sex attraction. Let me explain what that means. Because I think we get it wrong a lot of times, and I'd be curious to know if you have questions about this. So there's usually two wrong viewpoints. Either one, healing means you never feel same-sex attraction again, or two, the SSA cannot be healed at all, and that you just have to live with it the rest of your life and kind of white knuckle it. Both of those are assumptions based on this false anthropology that the SSA is an identity. It's not. And so actually, and when we look at the Catholic framework, what we see is that because it's just a disordered temptation, a disordered attraction, really, it's about reordering the whole person back to God. Everything, and that's why any sin is like that. So it's not really, that's why asceticism, that's why the church knows something about it. So like the sacraments, asceticism, really getting closer to God. So asceticism, prayer, and the sacraments, it's about healing. Healing is actually just a reordering of the whole person to God. So it's not so much that you will never have something again. It is that ultimately what God has revealed to his church is that a lot of these things can be put into major submission, to where they're really not problematic in your day-to-day life because of the solution the church provides. So now but that's a lifelong thing.
I've experienced that with sins in my own life, sins that were disordered, and they are no longer an issue in my life. So yeah, I do think you get, because I saw you had posted a while ago, you said after years of, I think, because I do see this as something that you've thought deeply about, and you posted a few months back that you could actually see yourself like reordering that attraction and seeing yourself being loved by a man. I forgot what the exact wording you put in was, but like you would explain that, like you could see yourself like loving a man again, right?
Yeah, because if the church is true, if God is who he says he is, and you actually call yourself Catholic, the fundamental most thing about being Catholic is that you submit to the teaching. Well, the church teaches that this is not identity. This is actually a symptom of concupiscence, which means that everything that follows is the same method and the same healing for any other sin that is produced by concupiscence, which means, you know what I mean? And so my point is it's actually like that the whole idea of even like, can this be healed? All those questions are really framed under this already pre-accepted. And this is why it's actually scary. We don't even realize how much of the world's interpretation of the human person has gotten into us as Catholics. Because if we did, we wouldn't even ever think to call somebody a gay person. We would never think that, because that is a false anthropology. It is actually heresy, if you want to go that far. It is not true. The church does not teach that about us. It is not an identity. Identity is received. It is only received. It comes from God. It comes from our nature, which means that whatever you feel internally is disordered. And we've known that. And that's why it's, does that make sense? Sorry if I'm getting passionate, but it's like, I just want people to know this, because it heals you.
I know for a fact it's true because of my own disordered attractions in my own life. You know what I mean? It's like I don't see the world the same. I have a different paradigm now than when I first had that reversion experience, and I come in and using the confessional as a revolving door. I don't confess the same sins that I was confessing back then. Those sins are no longer even an issue in my life. Like, they're just completely removed from my life because my whole person has been reordered. Now it's more pride and sins of things like that. It's just a totally different thing that I'm dealing with now.
But you could slip back to those things, right? If you decided to walk away.
You leave the sacraments, or you let your prayer life completely fall away and things like that. For sure.
Yeah, and so I think that's kind of the false. We don't even realize how this false view of the human person has actually really seeped into us, because we don't even know completely what the church really says about us. And it's evident because, like I said, and it's even for me, because we would never call somebody a gay person. Like, we would just never do it, because it just literally is nonsensical when you know the teaching of the human person. And once you know that, you actually understand why everything that follows is just masterful. I mean, the sacraments, so yeah, people want to know, can you be healed from this? Well, if healing means you may never experience this again, and that's not really, healing is a reordering towards God. So yes. And God's a good father. So the first thing when people say they're struggling all the time, with this stuff, and they pray all the time. I mean, they've been asking God for a while. To be honest with you, the sacraments are sufficient. Yeah. So there's all this effort to meet people where they are is beautiful, and I think there's an aspect of it that can be very true. But to not lead with doctrines that's not it. That's not it. That's just
it's so important what you just said. That it's like, do we believe the sacraments are real or not? Right? Like, do we believe the sacraments are real or not? Because there very clearly they are, because the sacraments transform the world at one point, right? Like the pagan world was completely converted through the sacraments.
Right.
Those sacraments are still available to us. And what it comes down to is it's about are you going to work with God's grace, right? Like, are you going to cooperate with God's grace? And
Right.
God does give everybody the grace to heal from this stuff. God really does give all of us the grace. It's a matter of, are you cooperating with that grace? And do you really want this sin out of your life? Because if you really do want whatever this problem is out of your life, it's just going to require the sacraments and cooperation with God's grace, because he does give it to all of us.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing is that I really want to touch on this. And I'm not saying I have all the answers for everything, but I am somebody who thinks about these things a lot. And this seems to be like this almost manipulative push to suggest that, to sort of conflate truth with being not loving. And I think that's a dangerous line if we flirt with that too much, because then you make people, you see the same thing happening that happened in COVID. People shut up. They don't want to say anything because they don't want to be labeled hateful. Then you have, I have priests who will email me and say, hey, I have this same-sex attraction couple in my parish. They're married civilly and they want to and I don't sometimes know how to fully have the conversation. And that is, I think, a symptom, because I think what's really underneath that is, I think there's one, a lack in confidence in what God's revealed, and two, also the enemy tactic of infiltrating our brains, thinking that we have more responsibility if this person leaves or not. I guess what my point is if I tell you the truth, and you leave, that's on me.
Yeah.
But if they stay in the church and end up in hell because you never told them the truth, that is actually on you.
Yeah, like that'll
that's
be on you.
Yeah.
And that's on you in a way bigger way, than if not. So, and people don't want to have these conversations. I mean, humans are very complicated. It's not like I'm trying to just simplify this, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I have this conversation with my friend all the time, and him and I, he has an incredible story. Hopefully one day he'll share it more publicly. But he's an ex-transgender and now a Catholic, very in love with our Lord, just like I am. And we talk about it all the time, like, if somebody leaves because they're told the truth, I just think that it's being weaponized, because my experience is that most people who share the truth, these priests are not stupid. You know what I mean? Like, they know how to share the truth with love. Like, we're making it seem like our priests are just out there, like, bashing people over the head. And most of these men are very, very, they want people to be saved. They're not going over there and just, like, degrading people, They've
been conditioned to think the greatest offense is to offend. Right. And like, we've all kind of been conditioned to that. And especially when somebody does say something offensive, the backlash that we get, and, oh my goodness, everybody, we've all received the online mob when you say the wrong thing. Right. And I think we've all just been conditioned to think saying something offensive is the greatest sin. Right. And it's just the greatest sin is withholding the truth.
If you think of it, even the current, liturgy was more or less designed that way, right? To mold itself to everyone instead of forcing everyone to be molded to it. So I don't think it's too surprising that Catholics 70 years later now feel like we have to mold, ourselves to everyone else instead of molding them to the truth.
I think that's like the greatest problem with the new mass, is that it conditions us, right? Like it conditions us to think less of sin and just to think, well, and it's given us a false, the new like way Catholicism is presented to us is that it like just love at all costs, but not real love. Like, it's this, we all just need to be nice to one another, and that's not love. Like, love has nothing to do with niceness. It's
Ocean actually had a great comment here. When truth died in the West, they replaced charity with tolerance.
Yeah.
Well, so it's actually really interesting, right? So I'll tell you this is something I've thought about too. So let's go back to Eden. In the garden, when you think about God himself, it's, God says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So he's saying essentially, I'm reality itself. And so when you think of like the, Adam and Eve, what do they first do when? So the serpent, he enters the story and he starts with like this question, and the question is, did God really say? He's actually very masterful. He kind of is like, did he say that? And what it does in Eve is she kind of like has this moment where her intellect, by the way, that's a direct attack on her intellect, which is the God-given gift that tells us, it's how we know who God is. And it's given directly from God. So they were in reality and complete alliance with God. And all of a sudden now she's having, did God really say? What he's doing is he's attacking her intellect, and he's producing a tinge of doubt in her between her and God. And what does that mean? That means that she's questioning reality itself in that moment. She's like, is that? And the second she, and then that corruption of the intellect, that temptation of the intellect turns into a corruption of the will, right? So that's how it always works. And then she produces, and then the fall happens. Well, then after the fall happens, right? What happens? They cover up. Well, it's really interesting because the covering up is actually where shame enters, right? The shame is actually, I want to say it was something like, John Paul II actually said, but I thought it was really insightful. I don't know exactly what he said, but he said basically shame is not embarrassment. It's the soul correctly perceiving disorder. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden you've been separated from something, and your soul is inherently aware that it's disordered now or something like that. And I thought that was really interesting because when you think of shame, you think the world's response to shame is that we have to silence shame. Every response the world attempts to do is to silence the shame. And every response that Catholics do is to in order to heal disorder. Shame is the signal in order to heal disorder. It actually brings you back home. So it's like shame in both those frameworks are seen very differently. So shame points you back home in Catholic theology, but in the world it's something to be silenced. And so that's Catholic, why when
we need to bring back Catholic guilt, because like guilt. Catholic guilt is a good thing. It's like people you hear the old timers talk about it, like, oh, all that Catholic guilt. It's like all that Catholic guilt was your conscience telling you something's off. Something is very far off, and you need to come back home, right? And
that Catholic guilt kept the world in order for 50 years.
And it was like, like 100%. Like the Catholic guilt is such an important thing because I don't know. For me, ever since I came back to the church, I always had like a very high sensitivity to mortal sin. Like the second I would go near mortal sin, like I couldn't even listen to something that had to do with God. Like it would hurt so much. Like I couldn't visit my mom. I couldn't have conversations with my mom because my mom just radiates Christ. Like my mom really just, I don't know, like every conversation with her, and it's not even like if they're focused on God or anything. Like there's just something about like even talking to that woman, she just radiates Christ. So I would avoid my mother if I even was anywhere near mortal sin. And it was like this immediate signal to me that like, I have to get to confession. But like Catholic guilt is an amazing thing. It's God's signal in us that we need to get our asses to confession. We need to come back to him.
Yeah, and it's just so amazing when you see everything side by side of how it's like operating. It's like one, you're right, that's the conscience, and it points you back in the direction of God. And I also like to reframe the fall. I'm not like trying to rewrite things. I'm just saying it's something worth considering, that when you go back and you realize that God is reality itself, he is the truth. Okay, so if God is truth, then when we get like the shame that is produced from being like exiled, if you will, you could see it as less of a punishment and more of a consequence, I think, because consequence it was an honored choice. So God honored a choice that we made, and you actually literally cannot live in reality anymore because you've chosen an untruth. So you've actually chosen yourself to live outside reality. So the exile is him honoring a choice of free will. He's saying, okay. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So I think people see it as like a shameful thing, but it's like, I don't know. I guess I'm still verbally analyzing it out loud. I'm a verbal processor.
You should start a Substack, Nancy. Get these thoughts on paper because I'm serious. Like, get these thoughts on paper, especially when you're having those light bulbs go off in your head, because there's clearly something clicking for you where you're like, man, I gotta talk about this, right? So even if they're just occasional posts or start a diary. Like really start a diary and start writing this stuff down, because you're hitting on things that I haven't really heard anybody else in this space talk about. And
Yeah.
I've never even heard healing talked about, because I've watched a ton of like those courage videos and things like that, like listening to it. And you're right, like even in the courage videos, it's like you see like the dating couple is now living in separate bedrooms, and that like there's something wrong about that. There's something very, very off about that. Even if they're living a chaste life, it's the temptation is like almost like unbearable for them. And I've heard a lot of I don't want to, but I've heard several of the people that were involved in that movement like fell off and went the other way, and you know it's
well, yeah, it goes along the lines of not putting yourself in a what is it called,
near occasion of sin.
Near occasion of sin. I mean, that's another thing, is it's like you're just, you know, it's like when I was getting off drugs, I wouldn't go to the bar and just be like, I could just drink White Dolphins all night, you know.
That's a good question, actually.
I'm just saying.
When courage first came around, I actually was like really into, because I have people that I know that are struggling with, and I was trying to figure out like, is there somewhere I could send them, right? So when those videos came, I mean, it's been years since they came out, but when they came out, I was looking for a way to have these conversations, so I watched them.
Yeah. Well, I don't actually personally, I don't know much. I've heard a lot of my friends that I've made over the years say really good things about courage. Yeah. I personally have never needed courage, because I really do believe that the sacraments are sufficient, and I really just dove into, and that's not, I don't want to seem like, look, I think that I don't know anything about courage. I just know they support people, and I think they've done a lot of great work, and I actually don't know enough about them to know. I think
it works something like an AA meeting, right? Like there's something about community and sharing, and
yeah,
like it's kind of like that, right? Like, so having people who understand what you're going through to share your experience with is going to be beneficial, especially if they're, you know, on the same page as you and they're going through it too. It's the same reason you have grief support groups. It's the same reason you have codependency support groups. And yeah, it's like that's the whole purpose of things. Yeah, so I would think that's where it is, but
yeah, no, I agree with that. So I just don't know anything to comment on them, but I've heard only good things from some of my friends that have appreciated what they do.
It's way better than going to a Father James Martin thing. You know what I mean? It's like,
if you had 1 minute to say whatever you wanted to Father Jim Martin, what would you say to him?
Repent.
Oh gosh. Father James Martin, he liked a few of my posts, so he's definitely made it known that he's seen my stuff.
Interesting.
Which he liked things that wouldn't you know he didn't agree with, so I think it was like a.
Oh, did he?
It was his form of virtue signaling.
I think it was his form of I don't know. You know, I remember sending it to my brother. I'm like, look who liked my post. So I wouldn't say he probably knows who I am by name, but dude, every time I see that in the chat, Father James Martin, it just trips me out. I can't with you guys. Hey, careful now.
All right, so we're going to run through some of the questions we highlited real quick.
Well, she was about to answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, you have a minute to talk to Father Martin.
Well, I would just tell him to go back to seminary and learn the catechism. Probably.
Seminary.
Yeah, I would tell him to, you know, I don't know. That's probably what I would do, because I don't know. I don't think a priest could be that unaware of church teaching. I could be wrong. I don't know. But like, I just feel like if you're that unaware, then there's something more sinister going on, but I'm not here to like, I don't know, you know.
Right.
So I actually pray for him quite often, mostly because I care about the souls he's misleading.
So. All right, so let's jump into some of these questions real quick. So, does Nancy think that same-sex attraction was a disorder that she overcame, and that she would not have been so if she
would not have had that disorder?
Yeah. And he's asking because he's trying to get to if she thinks that same-sex attraction is real or just a trauma response.
I don't know how those are different. I think that it's real. What does he mean by real? I mean, like, it's real in that it becomes a disorder. I
think he's asking, is it inherent?
Like, are you born with it?
Yeah.
No, you're not born with it. You can't be born with. I mean, I'm willing to be corrected by somebody who's more like theologically formed. But if we take the church at her word, and it's a disordered inclination. Tell me a baby that can be born with a disorder. I mean, just you get more disordered as time goes on. You know, and there's different. So I think it's more trauma family based.
Even the person I was talking about earlier, my wife's friend from college, he was born into a family where his older brother, so his parents had his older brother, and the mom got pregnant with him like right away, and his older brother died of sudden infant death syndrome right before he was born. So he now comes into a home where he's born into, where the family is traumatized they lost their child. The father checks out, and the mother is super overbearing because she just lost her other child, right? So he's in this world where he grows up with an absent father and an overbearing mother, and that kind of warps his understanding of male, female, and then at some point he sexualizes that, you know, and that's kind of what happens to him.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I actually agree. It's probably very family related. I think that most of the stuff comes from dynamics. So if you think about everything as either being ordered towards God or disordered, then you can imagine that every person within the family dynamic has their own version of disorder and order. And based on those fluctuating, disorders that are occurring in the home, then that naturally would go downstream to the kids. And so I don't want to hear people say, well, I've noticed that my kid was, going to be gay since he was like 4. I was like, no, you just noticed disorder very early, and that's normal. Yeah. Like we live in a very disordered world. So you notice disorder happening early.
I wonder, like, you said earlier, talking about like, no baby is gay, right? As a baby. Yeah. And I think like no baby comes out a degenerate gambler. But I think now we recognize that there is, with like addiction, there does seem to be some sort of inherent
predilection towards something.
Predilection towards some sort of addictive sort of behavior. I wonder if there isn't something similar, some sort of genetic predilection toward some sort of destructive behavior that in some cases due to trauma manifests as same-sex attraction or something like that.
It's possible. I don't know. I think that's like beyond my pay grade, because I know what you're saying. But I will say this just as something to sit and chew on your thoughts. So you can make the case that there's certain types of people who are more inclined to become drug addicts. But then if you look at that person, they might be a workaholic. So they're still an addict. It's just a matter of how they've been formed and what that gets driven. So the point is that person really much different than the drug addict? I mean, or are they still disordered? It's just been geared in another way. I don't know. I don't know how those cross over. I don't know how they, you know what I mean? So that's a good question, and it's worth thinking about. But I don't
know. Michael's asking, how is your relationship with your father now?
Wonderful. No, we live together actually, and it's not without its challenges, but I think that a lot of that God is honestly kind of been blowing my mind and what is possible as far as
heals
healing.
Not just our own things, but he heals relationships. He heals. He's capable of healing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's not actually, it's funny because you think like, I think, we always think of this person. I'm not saying this is my dad, this is just in general. But if you think of somebody that you just really don't have a good relationship with, that you think maybe it would be nice to have a good relationship with them or to heal something like that, you often think of if that person would only change. But actually, my perception of that has been radically shifted once again on my head as a result of my own faith. And actually what I found is that the more I started changing, the more I was able to have a capacity to love the things that were more difficult, that before I just had no tolerance for. So, and then that actually through that, they start to change. Like when you change, they change. It's one of my priests said that in confession one time. I'll never forget it. And he was like, you change, he changed. You change, he changed. And I thought like, that's so simple. So the more I started having more love in my heart, and it takes a lot of effort. So I guess Yeah, we're in a good spot. I love my dad.
I had that with work relationships because like you work with guys, and I found myself like years ago I would say, oh, I hate that guy, oh, I can't stand that guy, oh, I can't stand that guy. And I found that the guys that I thought that about, and that really particularly annoyed me because they would do things that would really annoy me, like I went out of my way to be kind to them and like just befriend them, and now they're some of my favorite people. You know, like you actually do. Like there's something happens where you force yourself to treat that relationship differently, and you act differently towards them, and then you can fix those so I make a point, like, because the guys I work with guys and they're like, oh, I hate that guy. I'm like, never say that. Like, don't ever say you hate somebody, because that implies you want bad things to happen to that person and things like you could, you know, there might be difficult people in your life, but really don't say you hate anybody, you know.
Can I answer one last thing real fast on the other thing? Because I don't feel like it's sufficient. The question about if you're born, and we were talking about, well, some people might have more of an inclination. Let's say even that's true, that somebody has more of a predisposition, which I don't particularly buy. But let's say it's possible. The answer is still the same. So I don't know. I don't even know that it almost, and I believe in the sacraments so much through my own experience and through just witnessing. And I believe in Christ so much that like it actually almost doesn't matter. Let's say somebody did have a predisposition. I believe it would just be as easy for them to correct that in the sacraments as it would be for someone to stumble upon it with trauma. So I guess getting in the weeds of how it is produced is kind of irrelevant. Because let's say somebody were to come out with some bunk science saying you could be gay, then I mean, think about how atrocious that would be. It would make it so much harder for people to think that the truth is in the church, because they're like, well, how evil is that I was born this way? And it actually, that's why I don't think you could be born gay, because I just don't think it's who the church says we are. And I go back.
This conversation has so much to do with why I don't buy sedevacantism, to be honest, because of how much the sacraments have worked in my life. I know the sacraments are real in the Novus Ordo Church. Like it's such a tangible thing for me. Like it's such a tangible thing for me that I know the sacraments are still valid in the church because they changed my life. And it's like you could never convince me otherwise, because I've seen the radical transformation of all the relationships in my life, in my marriage, and all these different things, that there's no human explanation for it. It's not because I did something, like I just went to mass. And I went to confession, and that literally changed everything in my life.
Yeah.
You didn't have to read every papal bull first, Aunt?
I didn't study the preconciliar documents till recently, guys.
Well, and actually, that's the other reason why it's so dangerous to treat LGBT people as special, because that's actually what the world does. And so, actually, if the church were to treat the gay issue as some special issue that needs to be addressed, as if they're different than any other sinner, then we're actually the reason they feel different, because we're treating them as if they are. Yeah. And that's the thing. It actually reinforces what they say they already feel, is that we want to just be seen as normal and regular.
You're some special. You got some special sin that we got to work on. It's like, no, just go to the mass.
Right. And so, and that's why it's like, no, like the answer is the same across the board. And so, yeah, anyway.
I do want to, I think Eric has been asking a lot about this.
Yeah. So Eric, if you didn't see his previous comments, he is an addict, and he's currently in a relapse.
Yeah.
So he's asking if you experienced detox.
I did not experience the full effects of it from heroin or anything like that, although I have experienced minor effects of it from using like the painkillers and stuff. You feel like your skin's, getting tight, like you can't sleep for anything. You throw up, you have things like that.
I've gone through full-blown opiate withdrawals. I've gone through, they're brutal, like full-blown opiate.
Yeah.
I've gone through.
I haven't gone through that because opiates wasn't really my drug of choice. It was more of like when nothing else was around, that's what I'd go to. But I have gone off meth withdrawal, and they don't really give you anything. They give you antipsychotics to get through that. And that was actually the most brutal that I've ever gone through. And that's a whole different kind of detox, though. It's not physical as much as it's mental, because you go through psychosis. So I had breaks from reality. I could hear voices. So it's a whole different type of deal.
Eric, the alcohol withdrawal, I've never struggled with anything like that. But from what I hear, alcohol withdrawals, like there's two, is like benzos and alcohol are the two that you can't just kick. If you're going through withdrawals, like you kind of need medical help going through that, because you could go into cardiac arrest from it. So, but Eric,
tremors, definitely praying for Eric.
Been down this road before, and he's gone through this stuff before. But dude, go to a meeting if that's what you got to do. Go to a meeting, whatever it is. But what other questions did we have in there? I'll be praying for Eric. Did you ever think you'd be working with your brother?
No, actually, no, and I guarantee he never thought he'd ever work with me.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit, because relationships, like I could tell you, even like from Rob and I, right? We've talked a little bit before, like we've been doing this show for 4 years together now, right? And you're bound to get on each other's nerves. I think the biggest thing Rob and I bicker about now are like show titles, and like I can sense Rob seething through the text messages when I make a suggestion for him.
I try to make sure you can sense me seething.
He's like, I'm like, well, what do we go with this? And he's like, he doesn't change it at all. And he's like, how about this? And he changes it. But we've got to the point now where when he does that, I kind of laugh about it. I'm just like, he's a stubborn bastard, you know. But there's times like I kind of see part of the role Rob and I have as showing people like what two completely different freaking people.
Opposites.
Like total freaking opposites, Rob and I, right? Like we are opposite ends of the planet, personality wise, temperament wise, everything. But how like God did something beautiful between us, man. Like
this sounds so gay.
I don't care what it sounds like. We're two guys from different sides of the country, totally, completely different personalities.
This is what's going to get clipped. This is what they're going to clip.
Whatever. Let people talk. But no, because I think through us going through some of the stuff we've done on this show, it's helped Rob with his own relationship with his mother. Yeah. I think it helped. It's helped me in my marriage. It's helped me in all the different, because relationships are such a difficult thing, and we're in a time where people, especially online, like you see people just block people. And then we had this conversation the other day with people doing the no contact thing. And I think, you know, you're working for your brother essentially. And I know Josh is difficult, and I'm sure that's not easy at all times. Like your brother's a pain in the ass sometimes. I've had many conversations with him. So how does that play out with that dynamic? Because you were his little sister, and I don't know what the relationship growing up was like, but now you guys are working on something together. And he, just for the record, he says nothing but amazing things. He's like, I've never seen anybody work as hard as my sister.
Okay. Yeah. Josh, can I answer this? I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I mean, you can imagine it's like any brother sister. I'm sure. I mean, we compute information differently. So he's just like very intellectual. So it's been a learning process for both of us. And quite frankly, I actually am just profoundly grateful for the progress. Like if you would see some of the progress that we understand each other so much better. And like, you know, anytime you have communication differences and or the way you process information, you know, it requires both people, if you guys love each other, to come and to sort of meet in the middle somewhere. And like, all I can say is that I have a really wonderful relationship with my brother. Obviously, nobody in their right mind could say they've never had any issues with their sibling or anything like that. But I would say overarchingly, I think he would agree with this. And I think he would actually say this too, is that like, I think that the way we've learned to communicate with each other is just, it's just been actually quite amazing. And so I think that is the part that truly excites me. And he knows this because I don't get the same Josh as maybe other people get, because my Josh, No, that's gay. No, I'm just kidding. My brother.
Sexual, not gay. Okay.
Yeah, all right. My brother, he's very gentle with me. He's actually very, for the most part. I mean, he's grown into being very gentle with me, and he's good because I need gentleness sometimes. I can be very sensitive. And I've also learned to speed up. I've learned on my end to take a paragraph and send it and say it in a sentence and get to the point. You know what I mean? So like, whereas he's gotten gentle with me, I've had to learn to get to the point with him because I'll just want to, go on and on.
I talked to him about it because, like I know he's your brother, but in a way he's got to be a father figure to you, right? Like he's your older brother. Like, and I try to talk about like spiritual fatherhood with people all the time because it's important. Like, because he does have a short temper, Josh, and he's like, and I'm like, be gentle. Like, see every relationship in your life as a spiritual fatherhood. It's stuff him and I talk about behind the scenes a lot. It's not stuff that we bring to the show a lot, but it's an important thing for all of us in every relationship we have, especially for those who are less mature in the faith than us. If they're coming in, like you do have a role as a spiritual father and a spiritual mother. Like you're now a spiritual mother to every conversation you have in the world. It's a really important thing to adjust once you come into the faith like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. Especially like, I actually really enjoy that you said that because, most people have never really had the full, experience of what like true, fathership looks like or mothership, whatever. And so when you're in the faith, you're kind of all called to that. So I don't know if I reiterated that right, but yeah, no, Josh is definitely, oh, he's watching. He's
not
watching.
Always with me. He's not always patient with me, but I hope he's patient with you.
No one's always patient with you.
Well, no one's patient 100% of the time, but yeah, he is. He's pretty patient with me. And Josh is actually. People think that because sometimes he can be straight to the point and things like that. People like I don't know what they would think he is as a boss, but he's actually like the most hands-off boss that there is. And what I mean by hands-off is like he is not like a helicopter. He really trusts you to do your job. Like it's like super chill in that way. Like he really respects like the competence, and once he trusts you and you've kind of like shown that you're capable, he trusts you. And obviously if I need him for something else and then that's different, but like I've worked for some bosses who are just need to be like, and that's always really difficult when your competence isn't respected. He's not like that at all. He's very hands-off in that regard. He really trusts you to do your work, and that's awesome, actually.
Is there anything that I didn't cover in my questions that you want to touch on before we jump off? Because we've been off for quite a bit.
Yeah.
I know you would wanted to come on and talk about some stuff. I know we did cover like the bulk of it, but if there's anything you wanted to touch on before we jumped off, that I didn't ask.
No, I think the biggest things were just covering like the false anthropologies. There's one that the world's pushing. It's starting to impact the church. And if you don't know who you are as the church sees you, not as self-created, because that's what the fig leaves are, right? They're the thing that cover up the shame, so that's the self-madeness. The fig leaves have to fall, you know what I mean? And so, and then identity is received. And so my hope is that everyone tonight can go home and start practicing saying SSA instead of calling their relative gay or something like that, because I really think that language is how the culture was started to be taken over. They know language is powerful. That's why they changed it. That's why these movements have changed language, because whoever controls the language controls the narrative. And so that's why people say it's like not that big of a deal. No, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because language precedes understanding. And so the more we speak truthfully of what the human person is, the more we can start to help people in ways that we don't even realize the ripple effect of that. So, it's a disordered attraction. It's a disordered inclination. It's not an identity. So it's
before we go, everybody, it's Nick Cavazzo's birthday today.
Was it?
Happy birthday, Nick.
We'll have to text him happy birthday.
Texted Nick earlier and wished him a happy birthday.
These are the things you're supposed to inform me of.
Well, I I have his birthday like saved in my phone for some reason, and I just got an alert earlier, and I was
Dude,
like,
guys aren't supposed to do that.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I have it.
That's
but
funny.
yeah. So
Important question here.
yeah, can we still use gay as an insult for the boys?
Look, what you do in your own boy time, that sounds really bad, is between you and, the guys. No, I personally don't think that it's offensive, but I would be careful to, I'd be prudent to not say it around people who it would hurt, because it does hurt people's feelings. And I don't think we should be mean about that. I think that would be wrong. But yeah, I mean, if you want to have a group of boys and you say that, like,
worried about people's feelings. We don't care.
I mean,
Nancy,
I don't think any words are offensive. So,
Nancy, you're our only resident e-girl that we allow on here.
hey.
And Catherine, don't forget Catherine.
And Catherine, yeah. No, the reason why I do let you come on is because you don't ever display any kind of that behavior in any way, shape, or form. And when you do pop on online, very rarely that I do see you out there. It's always something really, really good to read. So I do hope you start writing a little bit of a Substack, because I'd love to. I'd like to or keep a diary or something. Like I think you have a gift of explaining this topic better than anybody I've heard. So don't yeah,
or
don't
even just recording a 2 or 3 minute short to put up on TikTok or YouTube. Even
that would be good.
I hate shorts so bad. I had to do a short because I'm heading to San Antonio, Texas tomorrow to speak at Sacred Heart Rally, and they wanted me to do a short for the event. And I do not like talking to a camera. It has been very difficult for me to look at this camera. It feels so fake. So maybe not the shorts, but maybe writing. But maybe. How did
the speech at the talk you gave at Mar-a-Lago go?
The Mar-a-Lago talk, I blacked out the whole time. Didn't remember what I said. Was super nervous, and then I had to be told later on what I said. No, I'm just kidding.
Was it your first public talk?
First public talk ever, you can imagine.
Right?
I'm in a room full of like bishops and priests, and I'm like, what is happening? No, it was cool. I wouldn't say it's a talk. It was just more like sharing my story. They told me I had 5 minutes. I took 13, I think.
Oh, it was a short one. That's good. Okay.
Yeah, and that was like over a year ago. But no, it was really. I mean, it was a huge blessing. I mean, I got to meet a lot of really cool people. Taylor Marshall helped me a lot, calm my nerves. Even Bishop Strickland was very kind. There's nothing like having Bishop Strickland open the elevator for you and your mom, and let you. He took us all the way to his floor not to his floor, to our floor, and then went back down to his floor. It was very, very kind. Yeah, so it was good. But now I'm doing a little bit more talking here and there, just when the Lord opens the door, and so. Pray for me for that. I'll be in Texas tomorrow.
Well, you did great on here tonight. So, Nancy, thank you so much for coming on. We love checking in with you. Hopefully, Josh isn't mad at me for making you spill a little bit of the tea behind the scenes between you guys. But
no, I think.
All right. So, Rob and I actually were thinking about maybe taking a week off the encyclical series so that we have some time to read through Rerum Novarum, because it's a pretty long encyclical.
Yeah, we need to do it justice.
We want to do it justice. That's going to be a highlight. So we may skip the encyclical series next week and just do some topical stuff on Tuesday and Thursday, and then follow up and do Rerum Novarum as kind of a crown jewel on the series that we've been doing so far. So we will see you guys on Tuesday night. Nancy, where can people find you?
As for right now, I'm a director of operations for Eternal Christendom. So they can find me on X. That's the only social media I have, which is my handle is Cancel Woke with a 3 at the end. So CANCELWOK 3, because the E version was taken. And then on Eternal Christendom, if you go to our website, we have plenty of free resources. You can reach out to me there if you ever need to contact through the contact form. And yeah.
Guys, share this episode, hit like, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Share this one. This one's a good one to get out there if somebody's got a long car ride or something. I know it was a long episode, but definitely easy to talk with Nancy. It wasn't, we didn't need to do much prep work for this one. I knew it was going to be a good one. So Nancy, we'll see you soon. Give our best to your brother and your family.
And tell him you're our favorite Charles.
Yeah.
Yes, you are our favorite Charles. We try and tell Josh that. So, all right, take us out, Rob.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Unite the clans. Enoch. Let's go. Yo. Take me back to my reversion. Unite the clans. I give thanks to each person. It's that same holy water that we immerse in. It's that same tradition that we all each verse in. United we